Morena, everyone, and welcome to the Council meeting of Monday, 10th of June 2024. The last meeting, really, the last Council meeting with the Commissioners here. This is the last time I'll sit in the chair and say these words. So very special and great to have so many of the staff in particular with us today. So just a reminder in terms of health and safety, if the alarm sounds, we make our way out the nearest door, which is probably the one at the back, and assemble across the road and wait for instructions from staff. Everyone needs to be aware we now have the live stream on and the video is publicly available on YouTube. A reminder to turn off or onto silent mobile phones. Shed, can I ask you to open for the last time with a karakia?
Tēnā koe, Anne. I whakahaere nei tēnei huihuinga whakamutunga, nō reira tēnā koe, huria ki rā. Kia koutou, kia tātou katoa, ko tau nei tēnei ata, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Nō reira, kia nui tātou. I te atua, anei rā mātou I huitahi nei. I te atua ka tukura ngā whakamoemiti, ngā whakawhetai ki a koe. Manakitia rā tātou I ngā hutangi ngā take e hora nei. Ko te tumanako kia whaihura hei tika mā tātou katoa. Nō reira, te atua tēnei mātou e inua tēnei ki a koe. Korore ki Tauranga tapu. Āmene.
Thanks, Shed. And special welcome today to a very special staff member who's brought along some friends and family to celebrate today. So we have no public forum and we'll go straight into that. And she's going to hate it, but I'm going to ask Marie to come on up here. So before we start on the official business of today's council meeting, we want to highlight a special milestone achieved by someone who's very close to the Commissioners' hearts. Marie King, our Executive Assistant, has made a huge contribution during our tenure, but her service to Tauranga City Council actually began in June 1994, which means that Marie is about to reach her 30-year anniversary. 30 years of service is an outstanding accomplishment, but what really stands out for us is the ever-cheerful and effective diligence with which Marie goes about the job of organising the work of 4 commissioners and supporting our, at times, very complex needs. Without Marie's always timely efficiency, our jobs would have been so much harder, and for that you have our sincere thanks. Marie is an extremely modest person. It's taken a lot to get her here today. But at the risk of embarrassing her even more, I have thus far, at the risk of embarrassing her even more than I have thus far, I want to talk about some of her achievements and attributes. And she first joined council as an administration assistant in the Democracy Group. In March 2000, Marie was appointed as the personal assistant to the Chief Executive, and in 2009, she became the executive assistant to the Mayor and Chief Executive. That later evolved into an executive assistant role for the Mayor and Deputy, and then in 2018 to attending to the needs of the Executive Office generally, probably mainly keeping Marty Grenfell in line and looking after the Mayor of the day. Over the years, Marie has worked with at least 15 principals, including mayors and deputy mayors, chief executives, and now 4 commissioners. Her institutional knowledge and deep understanding of our community has made her a particularly effective go-between, helping countless people along the way and keeping us out of trouble. And I have to say, Marie, without exception, I would get compliments of you and the way that you handle people on a regular basis. Not always the same about some of our other staff, particularly when they're talking about things like building consents and resource consents. I'm sorry, Sarah, but without exception, the way that Marie deals with people is just phenomenal, and people respect that. In short, she's a consummate professional who's totally committed to a job. She's usually in earlier than everyone else, often the last to leave, always has a cup of tea for me on the table, and she's always available to help out in a crisis. She's a model of calm efficiency when the rest of us are all panicking like chooks have lost their heads, and the rock that every organisation needs to provide stability and get its essential work done. Managing the diaries of 4 commissioners, chief executive, is no mean feat. So thank you, Marie, for being the exceptional person you are. Congratulations on your forthcoming 30-year anniversary. It's particularly fitting for us as commissioners that we are able to celebrate this milestone with you. I'm just going to ask the guys to say a few words too, just to compound the embarrassment now that we've got you standing up at the front of the room.
Kia ora, Marie. Tuku mihi ki a koe rā, I te atu rā ki tēnei taumata, tēnei tūranga. Me te mōhio nei hoki ngā ko tau anō rā I ngā mahi ki wainganui a mātou, me ki rā ki wainganui I o hoa mahi, nō reira tēnā koe. I just wanted to reiterate Anne's words. I've had a long association with council, but not actually worked formally in this particular council. I think, had limited interaction with you, but actually got to know you quite well over the last 3.5 years. But I think, as Anne's indicated, your calm demeanour, regardless of what's going on around us, you know, whether it's a protest or people upset or, you know, phone calls and all those other things that councillors and commissioners deal with. I think just your calm demeanour and managing those issues has been quite impeccable. So from my perspective, just really want to congratulate you on reaching this milestone. 30 years, that's a long time. I mean, I kind of think back 30 years ago, where was I? Recently married, just starting out on a work career. So yeah, just with those words, just congratulations. Kia ora.
And just following on from that, Marie, and interesting in terms of 30 years, because you started and I was still at Tauranga City. So it's over close to 30 years ago that I'd left, not thinking I'd ever be back around this table, certainly. But picking up the theme of that calmness, and you've always outlined that, being quite collected in terms of advising us what needed to be done. And I've heard you on the phone dealing with some quite difficult people, and sometimes the same people on a regular basis, and just that patience that you've brought to that, probably a lot more than I would have had in those types of situations. But you've displayed that all the time that I've known you, and in particularly in the last 3.5 years. And I also like your ability to second guess in terms of what we should potentially be doing, but also being prepared for various events and initiatives and that. So that whole preparedness and being well organised. And it doesn't matter when sent emails or requests, there was always a response in terms of if I'd missed something or the provision of some information. So really a job well done. And as Anne outlined, organising 4 commissioners on a regular basis and keeping our diaries all together has been no mean feat. So really like to acknowledge and congratulate you on your 30 years service.
I'd like to add my congratulations and thanks to Marie. It's largely been said, but one thing that I would really like to do is to recognise your thoughtfulness and consideration of others. And just a wee example of that, just last week I sold my car that I've been using to run around Tauranga while I've been here. And immediately, without any thought, Marie said, "Oh, if you need to use my car to do any messages, just you let me know." And, you know, and that's just an example of the consistent thoughtfulness for others. And I think that's been relayed in the comments of others of how you've handled the difficult calls, met the needs of 4 commissioners, met the needs of the community ringing in. So from me and all of us, thank you and congratulations on 30 fantastic and amazing years.
So over and above, she even collected horse poo for my garden. I mean, that's dedication. That's real dedication. So thank you, Marie. We really want to congratulate you. Thank you so much. It's going to miss you. Getting her here. Lovely to have your family here. So much a part of your life. Okay. Lovely way to finish on our last meeting, isn't it? Okay, so acceptance of later items. Now we've got one late item to add in that's into the supplementary agendas, which is the minutes from the 27th of May 2024 meeting, the adoption of the Smart Growth Strategy. Can I have someone move that? Shad and Bill, thank you. All those in favour against? All those in favour say aye. Rushing to get through the meeting. Against? So that motion is carried, thank you. Confidential business to be transferred into the open, there's none. Change to the order of business, I plan to take 12.7, the Porteri item, ahead of 12.6, because I think by clarifying something in 12.7, we probably won't need item 12.6, but we'll take 12.7 first. Do I need a mover and seconder to change the order? I do. Bill and Stephen, thank you. All those in favour say aye. Against, carried. That brings us then to the minutes of the meeting held on the 13th of May. Any corrections, any questions on that? Shad's moving, it's a true and correct record, and Stephen's seconding it. Any discussion? All those in favour say aye. Against, carried. Minutes of the meeting held on the 20th of May. That was a big meeting, wasn't it? Bill, you're going to move, and Shad second. I just have a question on page 42 of the agenda about the Hairini, the bus lane down from Hairini. So the resolution says that we'll include the bus lane in the business case for possible general traffic use outside of peak hours. But I thought we were also going to put that into place soon.
Yes, that is correct. So we've done since that time some work on it to assess the feasibility of it, and we have drafted a report as of last Friday, hot off the press. So we're just going through that at the moment. So you're right. We're looking at implementing that as soon as possible.
But when you say you've drafted a report, will they have to wait till for an incoming council to approve? Does it need council approval, or can you just do it?
We can just do it. We'll have to look into the to bylaws, etc., in terms of enforcement. But we do believe that if none of that is needed, we would be able to do it on the sooner side. Yes.
Just don't want it to get held up for months and months and get lost in the, because we're going to report back to the marae, I think, on Wednesday that's what's happening. Do you want delegated authority? You need delegated authority, or what are we doing? Yeah.
Yeah, that may not be necessary, but how about we look into that during the meeting? I think we'll be able to find that out and come back to us
if we need a resolution, because we can give delegated authority to do it, provided it doesn't need a bylaw change.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So I didn't write it down. Moved by Bill. and seconded by Stephen, or seconded by Shad. Okay, I normally write down, I didn't. Anything else in that big meeting? Did we sort out the, on page 46, was there a strategic, a surplus property that we had to remove? Or did we just, was that, I just wasn't sure whether that was the Greerton one, the Kairua Road one. Was that, were we going to leave that in? Leave it in because it's part of mana whenua conversations. Okay, all right. Those were my two questions.
Just a comment, Chair, in terms between the meeting on the 13th of May and the meeting of the 20th, there was a heap of business transacted. So I just wanted to make that observation. And I think that just then recognises in terms of the work of the staff in terms of getting to that stage.
I think from our point of view, it was good because we were able to tie up a whole lot of loose ends of work, the work that had been continuing on. So not a lot of new stuff, but we were able to tidy up and finish off work that had been taking place. Okay. So true and correct record, moved and seconded. All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. And then we have the minutes of the meeting of Monday, the 27th of May. Shad and Bill, that's adopting the spatial plan, the sub-regional spatial plan through smart growth. All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Okay, that brings us to petitions, and we have a petition from Bevan. We have Bevan Hamilton, is that correct? Come on up, Bevan. Who's got a petition on boat ramp fees. So come on up to the table, the microphone there. You just need to make sure that that is pushed. You push the button and it's green to talk into, and you've got 5 minutes.
Thank you. Kia ora. Good morning. I'm Bevan Harrington. I read about the boat ramp charges, or the parking charges in the Sun Live a few weeks back, that it was being changed, and asked a lot of the community on the Tauranga fishing page whether or not they were for or against it, and they'd said that most people would hadn't heard about it, and quite a few were annoyed or upset about that coming in. So I decided to make a petition so that I could speak here this morning. Do you want me to read out through my petition? It was what.
If you want to read it,
Okay.
And then we can ask you questions. It's really your time.
Okay. I'll read it through. I'm a resident of the Tauranga community who fishes to feed my family. The recent imposition of the $20 daily charge for using the ramps in our area will be an unnecessary burden to this activity. Fishing, which normally costs me less than that amount to go out in my boat to fish in the harbour, becomes significantly more expensive, and the additional expense, I think, would be discouraging from a lot of people to access the waterways. The boat ramps in Tauranga is a community resource that we, as far as I'm aware, already pay for in our rates, and they're used by different members of our community for different reasons, as in the fishing, like myself, water sports, and commuting to nearby islands. I urge the council today that we remove the upcoming fee, putting $20 a day on the ramps for people to use. There's a boat wash, so this is out of the thing, but there is a boat wash at the Sulphur Point ramp that I asked a few people about using, because the cost on that is $6, between $6 and $10 to wash your boat after fishing or using the water. And a lot of people don't use that because of the extra expense and prefer to go home, wash their own boat or trailer. That's $6 to $10, and you're sort of getting something for that. I think putting $20 on for everybody to use the ramps is far too high, if anything. As of this morning, there was, I think it's up there anyway, about 550 people that had signed the petition and left their emails to be counted for. And I know the original vote was I think there was 238 people that voted originally. Of that, only 48% of people had agreed to it and 47 against it. So I hoped that this would be a significant number, being double the amount that was total last time that are actually against the fees going in place. Yeah, that's about what I've got to say at the moment. I actually wanted to say thank you to Coral for just helping me through this process, because I haven't done anything like this before. So that was really helpful, and Ruby and Hannah at the Action Station, who set up the petition with me and made sure that it had what we needed to be on there.
Good. Thank you very much. So you're a resident of Tauranga?
Yes.
So the actual resolution to charge for the boat ramps includes a $200 per annum for residents. So the $20 is per day is only if you're a non-resident. So you can apply for a year's use of the boat ramps for $200. The difficulty we have, I mean, the petition will go through the process because it's a legitimate process. So it will go in, staff will prepare a report, and they'll bring that back to the incoming council that will be elected in July. The difficulty we have is it was part of the long-term plan, as you referred to it, and we did go out for public consultation, and that's the problem that any council faces. How do you get to everybody who might have an interest in something that you're doing? And you're right, it was pretty 50-50. Probably the people who use the boat ramps didn't want the charge, and the people that don't use the boat ramps want the charge. I think we tried to make it quite clear through the consultation that the money was to be used to upgrade the ramps and, in fact, increase the number of ramps, because we'll need to do that as more and more people use them. So that'll be a decision that the new council will have in front of them. If you stop charging, then you have to make up that difference in another way. So they have to stop funding something else in order to make up for the money that's lost from the charging. But at this stage, it comes into play on the 1st of July. But thank you very much for coming. It's not an easy process. We appreciate that.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me.
Any other questions from commissioners? No? Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Okay. That brings us to recommendations from other committees, and we have the recommendation from the Public Transport Joint Committee that Stephen and I represent the council on with the regional council. So the recommendations in our report are different from the recommendations that came through from the committee. And, oh, right, okay. Okay, I don't think anyone's noticed that number's wrong. The 24th of, I don't even know what that means.
That's a 2. Yeah, that's right.
Okay, but I'll fix that up. But the important thing, I think, is that we've worked very hard, both regional council and ourselves, to join up transport decisions, and often we were working in parallel, I think is the best way to describe it. Often there were contentious issues where we did have difficulties reaching agreement, because we were both coming from different aspects. I think a number of times I said at the committee we weren't redesigning or rebuilding the central city around bus lanes or bus stops. We were rebuilding a central city for people, some of whom will use buses. And so what we've tried to do, I think, in the region, in that joint committee, is work on jointly on the transport options that encompass every type of transport, from walking, cycling, public transport, cars, trucks, light vehicles and even ferries recently. And so the logical thing, I think, at the end of that is that we all agreed that would make much more sense, seeing we have a sub-regional transport system plan, to have a committee, a joint committee of the three councils that are involved with that, working together on that transport plan, where everything then is able to be considered. And that's really what we're recommending through. Now, the terms of reference still have a couple of typos with public transport, but I suggest that we just take that up quietly after the meeting and get those terms of reference tidied up. Essentially, they are fit for purpose. So, Nick, did you want to make some comment?
Just on those changes not having been made since the joint PT committee was pretty much hand to mouth last week with the agenda being finalised, but that was minuted at the joint PT meeting. So the intent is for us to go through and tidy that up. So if the resolution here could be to accommodate the changes as recommended at the joint PT committee meeting, I think then that'll cover it.
And that's what we've got. So we're receiving the report and approving the recommendations regarding the revised terms of reference. And I think that covers it, enables us to tidy it. Stephen, did you want to make any comment?
Thank you, Chair. I think you've largely covered it. The intent here is that we look at transport as a system, and our mission, or the mission of this committee, will be that it optimises the contribution that all transport modes play and how they integrate and work together in achieving better mobility across the city. So there's that integration at that point, but you'll notice in the terms of reference there's also discussion of the integration of transport with land use, and many of the issues that have arisen over the last couple of years have been really at that interface of, we had the debate recently in terms of the interface of bus stops with urban commercial development in Durham Street. And we have to design it in a way that both the needs of people and where they live and how they do business are integrated effectively with the transport system that serves that. So a more holistic view of that, I think, will be very advantageous going forward. And also understanding the needs of those who live outside our city in Western Bay, and having that in the purview of the committee will add depth to its role as well. So I certainly support the motion, happy to move it. I do note that there are references to a number of public transport within the terms of reference, and that was raised at our committee meeting when we endorsed the recommendation to go forward to the councils, and some of those changes have yet to be made, but they can be done offline. So I'll move the motion, Chair.
I'm happy to second. I do have a question or two though. Just in relation to TSP and the TSP governance, this will dissolve the governance group set up for TSP.
I think the intention is, and we did have quite a discussion at the committee about TSP. At the moment, it sort of reports up to Smart Growth. Well, I introduced that when I was the acting chair, so that it did report, but it really is only a report. So the actual governance of it has been at the chief executive level to date. This will give that political oversight of the TSP. I think that's what's intended to. The work will still be done at the chief executive or delegated officials, staff levels, but it does give that political oversight, and I think that's essential. And as Stephen says, to make sure that all those modes of transport are considered, and then how they affect land use, because that's really what the TSP is about. And that's what has felt to be lacking with the implementation of TSP. And we know that from some of the discussions that we've had at Smart Growth about TSP. So that will give it some, I think that will enable, that will help the staff with the implementation. That's the intention. I have to say we've yet to talk with Western Bay formally. But again, it has to be, it's a recommendation through to the incoming council who might have completely different ideas about how they want to do things. But certainly we've worked hard with the regional council and the staff have worked hard to try and make sure that this works well. And that's the thinking that we want to present to the new council.
That was the nature of my other question in terms of Western Bay, but yeah, thank you.
I think we've spoken informally to them, but and the other partner, of course, is NZTA. Okay, so anything else? That's moved and seconded. I'll put that. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. So we have the Tauranga Marina Society here. I can see them sitting there. We've got Eric and Ray and Greg. Welcome. Morning, gentlemen. So just one mic at a time if you can, otherwise we get feedback, but just make sure you've got the green button on, whoever's speaking.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioners. Do you want me to read my report or would you be happy to take it as read and just fire questions at us?
Good if you just open, I don't have to read it all, but maybe just read some of the, tell us some of the highlights of the work that you've been doing, because you've been pretty busy down there for a while.
I suppose there's some real key points about the marina is that it was basically built by the members and funded by the members. It was done via an act of parliament, basically to remove swing moorings from the upper harbour so that they could build what we now know as the first harbour bridge. Just for argument's sake, those 500 moorings would take up about 60 hectares of water if it was allowed to carry on with swing moorings. So that was an interesting start. We now do have our own resource consent with the regional council that goes out to 2052. So we've overridden the government's decision. The other part was originally we worked with the Harbour Board, but of course under the Local Government Act that then became the City Council, of which have been our partnership or caretaking role. And I think we've enjoyed a pretty good working relationship with both the commissioners and our previous councils, and may that continue. Probably the biggest thing is that the marina had a 40-year life, which mean it expired 2022. A report done by council in 2016 said it would last just that long. So we've now basically built 6 of the 9 new piers, completely replaced. Total cost when completion will be $20 million plus. That's just for the piers. On top of that, the society itself has funded footpath upgrade, new power supply and new water supply. So it's a significant infrastructure and facility, totally funded by its members for the benefit of the greater Bay of Plenty Waikato area. We've got to remember that there's the odd farmer in the Waikato that sneaks over the hill. I think just future references that we have a management plan that probably needs tweaking. There's some parts of that are confusing. One of it says that the ownership of the marina is the Tauranga City Council, but if you go on and read the definition, they mean 4 lots of land that make up the parking lot and where the facility is leased out. Interesting thing is that car park was actually also developed by the members of the Marina Society, but we kindly gave it to the public of the city. Yeah, that's basically us. Thank you for your support in a couple of interesting areas that we've dealt with over the last 3 or 4 years. Let's hope they evaporate. And let's say, hope we have the same working relationship with the new 9 people sitting around us in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and we do want to congratulate you because the work that the members have carried out and you on their behalf is really producing an amazing facility, and it's a very high quality, and it's a really good amenity for not only your members but the whole city. So well done. And we hope that that relationship continues. I know that you are working with our staff around the management agreement to tidy up a few bits and pieces and make it fit for purpose. It's a living document. That's totally appropriate. But timing was against us, and I think that's a good way to start with the incoming council too. I'd suggest that you get them down there quickly, even get them on the early tours and get them down to see just what an amazing job you're doing down there. But thank you very much. And yes, and we've had a very good relationship, very productive, even through some difficult times. Yep. Bill?
Thanks, Chair. Just again, acknowledging the work that's been done down there in the refurbishment of the marina. Just in terms of the remaining piers, when do you intend to have all the berth upgrades completed?
The last will be E pier, which will be 2026. The D and E are presently being manufactured in France. They will be shipped and expected to be arrive here probably by November of this year, of which 25 will do D and early 26 will be E. Deposits have been paid for those. All our piles, steel piles, have been ordered and deposits are paid for that. So although a large number of people on D and E are not necessarily ready to pay their fees, a large number already have. So that's a positive, which gave us enough cash to go and do the first piece. So pretty much by June 26, I would say we'd be pretty much finished.
Thank you. Thank you guys for delivering your report today. I think probably one of the things from a commission point of view were the discussions we've had over the last 3.5 years, well, probably less than that, but it's actually quite useful for you guys to come and present. And I think given the relationship between the council and yourselves and the use of, you know, the interface between council and your berths, I think just from a transparency point of view, for the public to understand what that relationship looks like and how we're managing that relationship. And I would encourage the incoming council and for yourselves to maintain, I think, having that open and transparent relationship into the future. I think just to kind of dissuade some of the criticism that we've heard and dissuade some of that may come in the future.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think it was 2017, 2018 when I became the chairman. We invited the then council to a morning tea and explained that they thought they owned the marina, and then suggested that they need to get $20 million worth of rate money to fund the upgrade. They smiled to start with and then cringed at the end. But we then said, look, if you look at that we actually built it and acknowledge that we own it, we will take over that responsibility, of which the then council did. And you've all seen the letter signed by Mr. Clout that says, and it was the deputy signed it because Greg Brownless at the time is a member of our society, so he stood to one side. But yes, I think that's important that we bake some scones and get the coffees ready.
There's also a council resolution which we found that explains that too. So, but I think Shev's right, and we've encouraged you to come and present like this, and I think, and it gives the opportunity then to talk about what your plans are for the future as well. But you know, congratulations, you'll be looking forward to 2026. Is that when you go fishing and take a bit of a break?
I'll be about 74 by then, and a lot greyer. We have got some future thinkings and future plans. One of the biggest challenges that the industry faces is with the growth of the port. The little contractors are being pushed out as far as the lakes. So that's incurring a lot of extra cost, travel, which is burden. But we've got some ideas that we've talked to staff about, and we just need to work quietly with that. It's all very well to work quietly with staff, but if we haven't warned our members of what our thinking is, sometimes that can be politically disastrous. But yeah, thank you all for your time and effort you've put into this today.
Very much. So I think we're just receiving the report and the attached. Thank you, Bill. And Stephen second. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Thank you very much. Best of luck. Good fishing.
Thank you.
That brings us to Hairini Bridge strengthening. I had to read this several times, but I was comforted by the fact that so did my colleagues. And the fact that I'm not actually making a big decision about what to do, just about what the process is from here on.
Morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners. This information is a briefing paper on the Hairini Bridge strengthening. I'm going to take the report as read, and we are looking to endorse the following on the decisions on item B from 1 to 7. And I'm going to hand over to Derek McFadden, who's the Senior Project Manager for this project.
Thank you, Jason. Morning, Madam Chair and Commissioners, and do to some extent apologise for the heaviness of this report, but there is a...
Not really.
It is necessary, unfortunately. So this work came about as a result of the business case, the single stage business case we're doing for 15th to Welcome Bay. So as a result of that, we needed to look at Hairini Bridge and the integrity of that structure. We're going to put a clip-on shared use path and convert it to 3 lanes of traffic. So obviously we needed to know that that had a reasonable degree of life left in it. One of the constraints of that structure is corrosion onset in the piles. Corrosion is already setting into those piles, but that can be mitigated by corrosion protection. That corrosion protection cost of something $1.6 million or something like that. We, on the best estimates we have, that'll give it another 30, possibly 40 years life out of that structure. So from a structural integrity point of view, the bridge will be okay. But during that period of time, there is a 33% probability that we'll have something of the order of a 100-year earthquake event during that period of time. Now, that earthquake event, if we didn't do anything to the bridge, would cause an outage at our best estimates of about 90 days across that corridor. So that's quite significant. And that needs to be taken into the context of an earthquake of that event would cause damage to other structures in the network as well. So as a result of the part of the business case, and it was co-funded by NZTA, we looked at the economic benefits of strengthening the bridge. So we came up with a positive economic benefit for strengthening the bridge. So that's kind of where we're at the moment. We've done some initial work on that. We want to do some further work on that to confirm that and then bring that through to a full business case for evaluation. So one of the things to keep in mind is that if we did strengthen the bridge, then that would give protection to that corridor for a 1 in 100 year event. But at the moment, we haven't looked at the causeway in any great detail. The causeway is quite a different exercise. There is a significant, very, very large cost in terms of repairing that for a large earthquake. And significant traffic disruption. So if we were to strengthen the bridge for a 100-year event, we would maintain that corridor open, but in a 250-year event, although the bridge would still be okay, the causeway would have settled and spread and there would be a significant outage. So it's just in terms of the context of this decision, if we did go forward with strengthening the bridge, we need to make sure that people are aware that that doesn't give you protection in all events going forward. Where we are at the moment, we now propose to have the analysis we've done independently peer reviewed and have discussions with NZTA about that from both a technical and a funding perspective. As I say, they've funded the studies to date and they haven't ruled out the possibility that they would co-fund the physical works for strengthening, which we estimate to be something of the order of $20 million. The other thing that this work is highlighted, as I said, there are other structures on the network, Mongatapu Bridge, Chapel Street Bridge, which would also undergo similar, if not worse, damage in an earthquake event of 100 years or that's order. So we believe that there needs to be a network-wide consideration. Before we make a decision in isolation on this structure, a network-wide consideration of the resilience of the network in seismic events. So we're seeking the council's endorsement for the decision-making process that we've laid out in the paper, which ultimately will lead to a further business case, which will come before the council at some stage for decision-making. So, any questions?
Thanks. So I guess, I mean, of course we've got to do this, and it is wise to put it in the context of the wider network when you're making these decisions, because they cost a lot of money could cost a lot of money to try and protect both the bridge and the causeway if that's what happens. Where in that process do you then consider the likelihood that within 20 years or 25 years that actually we need that 4-lane right through, and you might be talking a complete rebuild? Where does that feature in all of that?
It's a very good point, and we touched on it in the paper. I didn't cover it in my summary. Is that as part of the business case at the moment, because of the limitations of transport modelling and future year transport modelling, we haven't been able to say when the bridge would need to be replaced from a demand perspective. So part of the recommendations would be that we do some further more detailed modelling around that, because if we are, as you say, needing a new bridge in 20 years, then the economics for strengthening now probably doesn't stack up. So I think that is part of the further work that we need to do.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions on that? Stephen?
Just a comment. I mean, I think it's a sensible approach to take to consider all of the variables, including the demand modelling, because there's no point in spending a lot of money on something that's going to be redundant in, say, 20 years or whatever it might be. So getting that balance right is key, and I think the process set out ensures that the right information will be obtained. Happy to support the recommendation.
Move it? Yep. Second it, Phil. Any other questions for them? It's hard to ask questions, isn't it?
Just in terms of doing that wider network seismic resilience study, what sort of time frame would that involve?
Look, we've really only just started to think about that, and obviously it involves NZTA as well, because Mongatapu and the State Highway Bridge is involved. So I think it would be hard to give an estimate at the moment, but it is several months, I think, to do something like that. But I suspect, once we start going from here on with your endorsement for this approach, within the next month to 6 weeks, we'll have a better idea of the forward workload program associated with that. And obviously it needs to be joined up with what the resilience team is doing. We're having discussions with the resilience team, and they're thinking in the same way at the moment. So there is some planning to do before I could really answer that question. Sorry.
But none of this would hold up the potential construction of the clip-on and the 3 lanes due to start in July next year. Fingers crossed.
It will proceed regardless of this.
Right.
Yes.
All right. Nothing more? No, very sensible. Thank you. I'll put that. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Speed management plan. Huh? Round 2.
Round 2, yeah. So this is a follow-up.
There he comes.
Chair and
Look,
Commissioners.
it's always nice to see your smiling face. You two, sitting at the end of the table.
A follow-up from the 20th of May, where we presented this in a much more generic format, and it was left to lay on the table. And since then, we've considered the feedback and included more detailed evidence, basically. So that's where we're at, and happy to hand over to Sean and Karen.
Yes, so yeah, what Nick said summed it up really well. We've prioritised all the schools and given you a list of what priorities and where we believe the right line is to draw for the risk level. So we've taken that based on a risk assessment, which included school frontages, along with understanding where the key accesses are for the schools.
So I think you've done a much better job this time. Thank you very much. It's appropriate that we finish our last meeting with you two in front of us, isn't it? We've seen a lot of one another over the time. The only question I have really is along Cameron Road, and I think we did raise Cameron Road with you. So have you matched the risk with what the design of Cameron Road? Because the comments from people using Cameron Road, particularly stage 1 now, is that the traffic seems to be flowing better, et cetera, et cetera. So by putting variable road, I was going to say road pricing. I've just got that variable. I've got that in my head. I see Auckland's skipped ahead of us and even got a resolution to introduce it. So you know, is that going to affect that traffic flow greatly? Have you matched that?
So to put it into perspective, it's only a 10 kilometre an hour difference. So, and looking at the data that we have, the average speed along those sections of Cameron Road aren't at those times aren't really higher than that 40 anyway. We do have a fair experience of people red light running at those crossing points, and we hope that these additional electronic boards over those key times will also help to reiterate to the drivers.
Okay. Bill.
Not so much a question, Chair, but a comment. And it's noted in the report, and I'm on the table on paragraph 21, where it's this Te Manawa or Papamaa School, in terms of the pedestrian crossing and drivers not stopping at the crossing. So to me, it's probably a symptom of then a lack of enforcement and overview by police, because at the end of the day, if we do everything that's outlined here, it's only as good as the subsequent monitoring and enforcement. So my expectation, that's just why I wanted to make the comment, is that there will then be appropriate monitoring and enforcement by police, certainly in those areas where there have been risks, and obviously with the implementation of the variable speed signs, that certainly implementing and making sure there is a presence when those signs are operative. So, but I was concerned in terms of the pedestrian crossing and drivers not stopping, and the need for police to be out there and having.
Well, I think we've said that all along, that there's been a lack of road policing in Tauranga for the whole time we've been here. And we've consistently raised it with the local commander and the regional commander. It's all very well having all these rules and regulations, but if they're not enforced, driver behaviour continues. It is interesting, though, I have to make the comment that those raised pedestrian crossings do slow the traffic, because if you forget and you go over them too fast, especially in my little low car, you do know about it. So using those effectively might help too, but we do need that enforcement.
I'm happy to.
Okay. All right. Shared, second. Any further comments? All right. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Well done. What a nice way to finish. Eh? No, thank you. We really appreciate all the work that you've done. Thank you. And your patience with us. Oh, you're here for parking, of course. Right. Okay. Parking building rate
Although
change.
we will get Reece to come up as well.
Yep. When we saw it on the agenda, when we saw the item we said, oh, no, we're not going to finish up with parking rates, but it is good news.
No, so obviously responding to demand goes both ways, can go up, can go down. In this case, I'll treat most of it as red, but we're just looking to remove the $6.50 overnight charge for using the parking buildings overnight during the week. So that'll make the parking buildings free, the same as on street, between 5 p.m. and 6 a.m. over the weeknight.
I think that's really good. It's disappointing though, the figures for the usage of the Spring Street. But I understand that you are looking at new lighting and refurbishment of it. Is that correct?
Yeah, so there's a lot of work underway at the moment. There's CCTV upgrades in the building as well to help improve the safety aspect for people. We're looking at upgrades with the pedestrian entry and exit ways, as well as whatever lighting we can do. We understand sometimes the buildings feel a little dark and gloomy as you're making your way through them. So we're doing what we can to make them a bit more inviting for people.
But it doesn't help that, most of the cop dramas, all murders and things and hostage taking all seem to take part in a parking building.
and they're actually incredibly safe stats wise.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, but both the buildings have a lot lower instances of police call outs and stuff like that than some of our open air car parks.
Oh.
Recommendation, Chair, but in so doing, and just picking up that point around safety, and it's certainly been raised over a period of time in terms of some people being reticent about using the car park buildings. And I think when Gareth and I and Shad met with some of the retailers in Devonport Road, and again, that was a reason in terms of a concern expressed by some of their employees about utilising the car parks. What I'm leading to is in terms of communicating through downtown Tauranga and other avenues in terms of that safety improvement work. So at least people can see that things are happening to make, and it might be more perception than reality, but I think overcoming some of that perception.
Thank you, that's a really good point, and we were waiting for today to get this decision to kind of kick off 6 months worth of perception changing activities to see if we can in fact change the public's perception about the availability of car parks in the city centre and being more inclined to using our car parking buildings. So if you pass this paper, we're away laughing.
So moved by Bill, have I got a seconder? Yeah, oh, Stephen, thank you. Anything else? Can I thank you, Reese, for the work that you've done? You've brought a pragmatism to parking that's really necessary. Really enjoyed. I know it's a big difference coming from the private sector into council, but you seem to have adapted pretty well. But do appreciate that cheerfulness that you bring to your role. Isn't always seen in parking.
Cheers, guys. It's been a pleasure.
Okay, I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Great. Thank you. GCC Public Realm. Emily, you haven't got yellow and grey and everything on today. Welcome.
I'll just come and sit at this end of the table. Won't make the same mistake as 2 weeks ago.
I did bring my moral support today.
All right.
And I have to say the shirt choice was not my finest moment, but we moved over the weekend and this was the only clean ironed shirt. So
I understand the problem, actually. I'm getting very low myself.
So we presented this paper 2 weeks ago and there was some considerable feedback on the day. In terms of the depth of work we'll need to do to make some of those changes, we haven't been able to complete them in the last 2 weeks, although we have started relevant conversations. What we're seeking today is delegation to the Chief Executive to sign off those changes, but we've outlined a pretty comprehensive list of what we think was your feedback, both in the meeting and in offline conversations, and we're just keen to check that that's okay, and if we need to make any tweaks to it, that's all fine, but hopefully we've largely captured your vision for what you want those design guidelines to achieve, and then we can go and update them and get on with it.
Yep, I'm very happy with where we've got to. I think it's going to make a big difference in our centre city. We've seen some of the seating already starting to pop up around the city. Yeah, no, it's looking good. And I think, yeah, you've captured here the essence of what we're looking for. Any questions? Happy to move. Bill's happy to move. Shad seconding. Are we? Okay, so we're receiving the report, endorsing the design guidelines with the amendments that are laid out, and delegating the final sign off to the Chief Executive. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Well done. Okay, so now we're going to go to 12.7 and deal with Porteri first. Andy and Carl. And Carlo.
Kia ora koutou. Would you like me to give you a brief overview of the report, or would you like to take it as read?
We'll probably, I think we should give a brief overview for public.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. Okay, so the purpose of the report is to provide a detailed update on Porteri concept plan, including next steps and timeframes which are outlined throughout the project and in relation to each activity area. It's also to confirm opportunities to engage with and further progress planning with Ngāti Kahu on behalf of mana whenua and other parties, including those properties adjacent to the land area. So really, I guess the key elements are captured within the resolutions and the executive summary. So we've broken down the report and the mapping into activity areas. And we step through the timeframes for each of those activity areas, including the proposed PAR protection site area, the cultural reserve areas, the active recreation areas, housing, and also the lower area of the site, which is for stormwater and ecological purposes. Moving forward, and I guess in terms of timeframes, you're well aware that we've put forward an application for the project to be included in the fast track approvals bill. If that is successful, we would be looking to move into divestment towards the end of this year, looking to identify a development partner and be able to move towards making that consent application mid next year. The reason that's important is because all of our delivery timeframes revolve around that consenting process. So in terms of, generally in terms of, I guess, both the recreation and moving into that housing, the planning is able to start or it's underway, but move into, I guess, gain more momentum over the coming 6 to 12 months and aiming to be able to put in that application mid next year. And then ultimately, we're moving towards a timeframe of late 2026, early 2027, when we start seeing a level of development, both recreation and housing on the ground. So probably just to cap off the summary, really do see a good opportunity to continue to work with mana whenua, really to recognise their relationship with that whenua. And that is through specific work and input into those cultural areas, the protection of the PAR site area. We still need to do some mahi to determine exactly where that is, as well as storytelling and other elements within those recreation and cultural areas and restoration of ecological. We also see the opportunity to work with mana whenua in relation to their aspirations to see more affordable housing opportunities or to see affordable housing opportunities over that site alongside broader market housing opportunities. So yeah, look, next steps is that continued engagement with mana whenua, awaiting the outcomes of the fast track approval spill process and where the project lands on that. And, you know, if that wasn't the case, then we'd be moving forward with a plan change process to see all this through anyhow. Yeah, so happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Carl. I think this has been quite a lengthy process with the hapu involved, mainly because it had already been through an environment court process earlier on, and so we recognised the significance of that land to mana whenua, and the change that we were proposing would have consequences for them. So I do want to thank the hapu for that dialogue that we've had as we've worked through this, and we've tried to work in a way that I think one of the early meetings someone talked about a cultural impact study, and we've tried to work that cultural impact has been part of the process all the way through as we develop the plans, rather than sort of come at the end and have a look and see how it was impacting. And so I think we've sort of reached a good place with which meets the needs of the city for some extra housing, protects the significance of the land, and respects mana whenua's attachment to that and some specific parts in particular. The only question really is, I'm just not quite sure why we appear to have a resolution that treats the development of this land differently from what we've done in the past. If I think of Smith's Farm, and the intent I understood once we get through all the process was to go out like we did with Smith's Farm to a developer to develop it. There's no intention for the council to develop it, and as part of that have a section set aside for affordable housing or specified for affordable housing. So I don't quite understand how we got ourselves into the position where, and in the back of our mind, we've always thought, like Smith's Farm, any profit would then go into support Te Manautaki or Te Papa. So how have we got into the position where that's not the case, and that the profits from any of the land development would go into paying for the infrastructure and the development of the sports complex, etc.? Because that's not our normal process.
Yeah, so I'll just kick that off, that answer to that question. So with Smith's Farm, all of the, I guess, the infrastructure budgets are included in the LTP. And then there's the proceeds which are treated separately. In this case here, I guess the issue is that through the LTP that we recently developed, a large chunk of the development costs and infrastructure costs for the site were not included in the LTP, and they would exceed most probably the proceeds for the sale of the site. So the assumption has been that in order for the project to, I guess, proceed, the proceeds are required to meet those costs, and yeah, potentially some additional funding is also required to be found over and on top of that. So that was, I guess, reported up through council through a confidential attachment that we had to the last Porteri report. So there is, I guess, a record of that, and that probably reflects the position that was reached at that time.
And so why wouldn't the developer who eventually takes it over and develops it, why wouldn't they be paying for some of those costs?
So a number of the costs are costs associated with developing the whole site. So they relate not just to the housing component, but they also relate to the reserve development. So getting roads and three waters, doing the earthworks, not just the actual reserve infrastructure itself. And that's on site. And then additionally off site, there are a range of further upgrades, particularly to the water and wastewater network, which are quite substantial. So those off site costs are normally delivered by the council, so that when we sell the site, we're selling a fully serviced site, so we can maximise value of the sale proceeds.
Okay, so we're sort of hoisted by our own petard there a bit.
I think relevant to this is that all of our growth areas require additional investment that is beyond the long-term plan. And I would see Porteri in the same sort of context, so that if and hopefully when balance sheet flexibility is enabled by the removal of three waters, then there could well be provision within the long-term plan to address both the infrastructure and the playing fields investment, in which case it could be treated like Smith's Farm and the profits could come back to the asset realisation reserve.
Yeah, but if you're hoping to have, you were saying 2026, that the timing wouldn't do that. The timing wouldn't allow for that, because I don't think the legislation will enable the off balance funding until
issue brought forward.
Yeah. Well, we're now starting to redesign the long-term plan in our last meeting. So it would have to be an option for council. I mean, I am uncomfortable that Spaces and Places would normally develop playgrounds, and that should be part of their normal budget. I can understand some of the other infrastructure, but not the playground, not developing the sports grounds. To me, they should be developed as part of our Spaces and Places normal budgeting, normal planning, and that's what we normally expect. So I wonder whether, I'm not sure, but I just wonder whether we need to make that clear, that the development of the sports grounds falls within the normal Spaces and Places budget as and when funds become available, because that doesn't stop the housing going in, and that might help with the timing. But I can understand about bringing to the market a piece of land that is serviced will get a higher value. It's like selling a house where you need the kitchen done up. People always think in their own mind it's going to cost 3 times as much, and so they try and take that off the price. So we get a better deal for council if it was fully serviced. So apart from Carl's work laying it all out and the processes, do we need a resolution then that makes it clear that the development of the sports grounds is out of the normal Spaces and Places budget as and when funds are available?
Yeah, I think that would leave a clear message. I think it's entirely appropriate to do that.
So we'll add that in. We'll add a D in that makes that clear. Is it D? No, sorry, we'll add a G in. Turn the page, Anne. Any other questions? Carl's laid it out pretty well, all the different areas and the processes that need to go through. We have a working group with mana whenua representatives and council working through those processes and those details. Yep. Okay, so we need a motion. Chad.
Sorry, I'm happy to move, but also just want to make the comment. I think when we first started, this was one of the projects I think put in front of us, and I think from a commission point of view, trying to find opportunities to develop more housing. But we're also aware of some of the issues and the challenges, particularly from a mana whenua perspective, and the sensitivity of the site. But I think at that time, when the commission first connected with Ngāti Kahu, I think in particular, I think trust at that point was quite low off the back of trying to resolve issues around the cycleway. To be fair, I think it was probably both ways. Low trust between the council and Ngāti Kahu around the cycleway and how to resolve that. But we've landed in a good place there. Things are now completed. But I think the commission and our staff have worked hard to try and rebuild that trust and confidence back in to the hapu about resolving some of these long-standing issues. Ideally, it's a suite of projects across that whole site, and knowing that Porteri and that significant site is of high value to them, and probably the centrepiece. But then also the connections and the activities around it. Yes, we do need sports fields, but at the same time, try and leverage what we do have to provide more housing and address some of that affordability and that affordability gap. But I do want to acknowledge, I think, the hard work of the staff, but also working with Ngāti Kahu and the reps that we've got working with us. There's still a long way to go. I mean, we've still got fast track. If it drops into a listed project, there's still a number of activities that we need to work through, and Carl's helpfully outlaid that in the report. But there are still some infrastructure challenges, as we've just discussed. But yeah, I'm happy to move the report, and for us to continue to work with Ngāti Kahu around the layout and how we provide for their relationships with the site, and possibly address some of their housing needs at the same time.
And you are happy to include a G which confirms that development of sports grounds is the responsibility of Spaces and Places and is included in their budget as funds allow. Okay. You second that?
Happy to second, Chair, and just making a comment on the way through. And whilst, for example, the plan that we have before us has a whole range of activity areas identified, I just wanted to ensure that, notwithstanding that individual identification of those areas, that the area is looked at in a comprehensive manner. My concern being it'd be very easy to focus on one area and perhaps not fully appreciate or ensure that it's connected to other activity areas within the overall land area. So I just wanted to make that comment.
And of course, the story of that piece of land is absolutely critical in the history of Tauranga and in fact in the history of New Zealand. It's mentioned in Geneva as a forerunner for the Geneva Convention, what was actually worked out on that site. So it is a very significant piece of land for New Zealand. Okay. So moved by Shad with the addition of G to make it clear that Spaces and Places have responsibility for developing the sports ground and as their funds allow, because I appreciate that they haven't budgeted for that. So moved by Shad, seconded by Bill. All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Thanks very much, and thanks, Carl, for the work that the team have done with Carlo on this. It's been a long process. Okay, that brings us to the exec report.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Oh, I beg your pardon. No, sorry. 12.6. Sorry. No, we'll go back. I think we'll still need it because we're not clear at this stage how much money will come from Porteri.
That's correct. At present, the report removes the whole 17 million. So there's obviously an element of it that would be removed, and it would be a lesser amount available for Te Manotaki.
Yeah. So do we want the report? Do we need the report? Or do we want to make it clear in the report that the amount, the 17 million will be reduced, but we're still not quite sure how much?
My view would be that you would still have the report because I think it's an important point and it's worthwhile having, and then you could have a resolution that notes the net proceeds, the available net proceeds from Porteri would be allocated. So you're basically putting that on the record that whatever comes from that is available would be earmarked it for this purpose. if that's what your intention is. I think that would be best to do that rather than to be silent on it.
I quickly wrote down, because you're very good at wording those resolutions, that the available net proceeds will be apportioned to Te Manautaki or Te Papa. Okay, you'll move that. Thank you, Stephen, and Bill Shad seconding with the addition of a C as described by Christine. Yep. Any further discussion? All those in favour say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Thank you very much. Now we get on to the exec report.
So the exec report this time is a little bit different. I guess it reflects really a little bit more like a report card of what is, and a little bit more reflective of the 3.5 years. I think the challenge for all of us was to actually stop writing. There's been just so many successes, but obviously also an awful lot of challenges along the way for us all. But overall, I think we're very hopeful that the report highlights the organisation's response to the urgency that you've so elegantly provided us, but also the way that the staff have picked up on that urgency and delivered an awful lot of stuff over 3.5 years. So each GM has also had to pick up the challenge of talking to the report for 2 to 3 minutes, and we have 2 to 3 slides each to do that. You've indicated that you'd like to stop and touch base with each GM at the end of their presentation. So unless there's anything else, Nick always goes first.
Start the clock.
Yeah, has anybody got a...
Obviously, focus on the X report for a fuller story, but a couple of the highlights I wanted to mention is that we have focused on the future of transport for Tauranga, which better caters for efficiency, intensification, importantly placemaking, as well as land use that we've talked about already today, cultural recognition, and particularly less trauma for future generations, as represented by that first picture. One of the highlights also I wanted to bring to the fore is how we've grown their delivery and operations portfolio from 82 million when the Commission came on board to 260 million, breaking the $100 million mark on maintenance and operations this year. And I think that's reflected on what we see out on the network. Potholing, the quality of the reseals, chip on asphalt, those sorts of things, which we do get feedback on from time to time, but much, much less. So a huge improvement in that space. The next couple of pictures represent some recent major milestones, but also the time and effort it takes to get projects to a starting point. It's always exciting to finish projects, but so much work goes into getting it to the starting point, getting the commitments, and Tauranga West Enabling Works and PEI are 2 of our 5 major transport projects represented there. The work we've done right across TCC, including your office as at governance level, interacting with central government and drawing on several groups within CDAs particularly to de-risk and get them to commitment, has been a real testament to strong collaboration and decision making and a unity of purpose. It set the path for establishing the next suite of major projects needed for the city. So that's 15th Ave Turret, Cameron Road Stage 2 and Hewlett Hull Tortera under Neil's leadership. The level of investment we have committed for those projects in the LTP provides a map for the future of transport, which is very much appreciated. And also lining it up for partner agencies like NZTA to do the same. Across the city, we now have a number of completed projects which show better, safer, more efficient, sustainable ways of moving people, commerce and freight, and Maunganui Road, which we see there is one example. Cameron Road is another. And the last photo of the city centre represents how you have pointed us towards transport being an enabler, and in so many instances being about placemaking and better form and function for the city, enhancing the value to the city. Thank you for those words. And not just to transport. key learning for us is that transport is too important to leave it to the transport experts. No disrespect to the transport experts, but we do need a balanced view on it, and I'm really pleased with how the new transport leadership team has landed on that. And hot off the press is that we signed up the last person to join that team last Friday, and we have a fantastic mix of knowledge, skill, and experience joining that team. So really pleased with where that's landed, and we do take that learning about placemaking and balanced views with us to the future. So thank you for that. Next slide. So in the water space, of course, we have to put Waiari treatment plant up there, a top-notch facility, not just nationally, but internationally, providing a fantastic service. The marine outfall clearance projects, to go to the bottom left, where we built the ROV, the remote operated vehicle, an innovation which has saved us millions, and an extended use of the pipe that's in place at the moment. And that bottom middle picture and bottom right are from Tauranga, for which we have a commitment of a $70 million investment with a bioreactor 2 and clarifier 3, which basically adds decades of capacity to the wastewater services. And I also here wanted to mention the innovative contract we have with Western Bay, the collaboration with them, where we're sort of dipping our toes in the water reform and the learnings from that. We've sort of taken to the work that we've done with BIA for a long time, although that didn't come to much in this instance. A lot of learnings came from that for us to take forward with wherever we see the need to take the 3 water space. We've also done a lot of work on the stormwater space. I feel I have to mention that we're putting a big effort into that with interventions, rain gardens, etc., on our projects to minimise the impact on runoff into the estuary and the sea and other waterways. And moving on to sustainability and waste. So the top, this just basically shows the reduction in greenhouse gases. The blue columns are the total greenhouse gases we emit, and the red column is the absolute and the total after subtracting what we can take out, i.e. planting trees and environmental impacts or interventions that we do. So it's a significant decrease, and our footprint has been so much improved. And below that, we just wanted to highlight that we do have a sustainability plan now. That's something that we haven't had before. We did a lot of work in the sustainability space, but we didn't have a plan for it. Didn't have hang off anything in particular. So to have that now as a northern sort of pointing us north is really, really helpful in our action plan. And of course, I've got to mention also the curbside collection, top right, where we're smashing our targets, thanks to the community. Huge impact on waste to landfill, but also the organics and food waste. And bottom right is just a picture of some of those interventions that we've done with solar panels at the Mount campsite, for instance. Many of those initiatives around the city. And that's it from infrastructure. Thank you. Any questions?
Thanks, Nick. Can I particularly compliment the transport team? And you know, it's great to hear you say that you can't leave transport to the transport experts, because that's good to know that message has got through. But I do want to compliment the flexibility or the innovation that we're starting to see through that, and it features in your report where you know, looking at, I mean, even Porteri Street putting concrete down, which could be done in a shorter period of time when you have to rebuild the road. some of those things that the staff are doing, thinking differently, are really having an effect. Some of them are quite small, some of them are quite large, but I did want to call that out. Waters, I think our waters, and we've given credit to previous councils because despite everything else, the investment has been made in those 3 waters. It might have been the only investment in the assets, but I think we are in many ways the envy of many other councils around the country. And then that remote device was just topped the bill, really. And that speaks again to the innovation that you don't see in the organisation. But we just have some amazing people who are prepared to think differently, and to you as their leader, allow them to work differently. So, congratulations on that. And then from sustainability aspect, I mean, we walked into the middle of that curbside, which was well on the way. It's hard to believe that a council would even contemplate stopping that. And I remember Stephen and I standing in that home show, berating people who thought that it was okay just to chuck everything out and let it go to landfill. In fact, I had some quite testy conversations with people because we came from places that were recycling and thinking about what it was that you actually put out at the gate. But then that working across council, and we saw that yesterday with the free tree giveaway, which had sustainability staff working alongside our arborists, and it was just fantastic to see. I don't know, by 8:30 there were people queued up to take their trees, and it was a real occasion, and people were just so excited and so willing to take part in growing the tree canopy of their city. It was and that's really what sustainability and waste is all about. It's getting individuals to take responsibility, and those people were taking home trees to plant to help with the environment. So well done. Stephen.
Thanks, Chair, and totally echo your comments. And I think I don't have a question, but I would like to make some comments about the journey I think that the Infrastructure Division have been on over the last 3.5 years. When we came here, it was projects like the curbside, which was politically very problematic. It was Cameron Road, and we lived and breathed Cameron Road Stage 1 all the way through. And the really good progress that was being made on water was evident right when we came here. But transport is the kind of the infrastructure platform on which great cities are made. And when you've got a city like Tauranga that has grown around the motor car, but is growing at a pace where that is no longer tenable to rely on continued sprawl into the countryside, we do have to change the story around how the city grows into the future. And it is much more about urban intensification along transport corridors, and in particular public transport corridors. And I think that one of the biggest learnings for all of us, including myself, when we faced the dilemma around Cameron Road, was that I think all of us thought of it as a project, a transport project. And it took some time for both the Commission and the wider organisation to start telling the story that this is actually a project about transforming how Tauranga grows into the future. And Cameron Stage 2 will be another piece of that. And if there's one message that I would like to leave with the Transport Department, who I think have done a fantastic job of learning and development over the 3.5-year period, is don't forget the need to sell the vision, tell the story why we are doing this project and what the benefit of this project will be for the future of the city, and get the focus on the outcome rather than all of the project inputs that are a necessary part of it. And when we go out and consult, it's more than a conversation about how this project is going to affect the business or the community as the works proceed. It's actually a conversation about how this project, yes, it might be a little bit painful in the short term, but hey, look at the result that we're going to have. And if you look back now on Cameron Road Stage 1, most people now are saying, actually, it looks pretty good. And they can see the value of that project in terms of how the city is going to grow in the future. And I'm going to leave on what I think is part of the story that I've personally had a bit of ownership of, is the future of that western, central, eastern corridor from Tauranga on the west, where there will be major urban residential development to complement the employment growth in the west, to connection to Bart's Corner by public transport along Cameron Road. And if you think about all of the schools, the hospital, the supermarkets, the service businesses, and all of the employment along Cameron Road, where we can also enable intensification along that corridor to provide the future housing need, to a revitalised CBD with Te Manamataki o Te Papa at its heart, supported by the private sector investment that's happening, then across the bridge to the Mount, where we're covering 70% of the employment in the city along that corridor, then we can transform the way the city grows into the future and not be reliant on continued stretch out into the countryside. It's an amazing opportunity, and that's the reason why that corridor and that series of transport projects are so important. And that corridor would not only accommodate people travelling from the west to the city, but it could also accommodate people travelling from the east to the city to the west. And so you could start to have a very effective public transport corridor that would really shift mode share, which is critically needed for the city's development. So I would hope and ask that vision is kept and pursued with, and I hope the new council pick it up with the same enthusiasm that we have, because I think that is so important to the future development of the city. So thank you, Nick, to you personally and to the team. I think you've done a great job, and we've now got good governance, a clear vision in place, and capability on the staff to really deliver. And I'm looking forward to looking back, if you like, and seeing it all come to fruition. Thanks, Nick.
Two or three matters, and just on the theme of Cameron Road, I think one of the learnings for myself on that, the significance of keeping an eye on what we're trying to achieve and what's the outcome we're seeking, because not just use it for travel, but I lived amongst it for 2.5 years also. And I think an important part of it, it would have been very easy in a number of occasions for us just to fall over and agree with some of the opposition or the noise in terms of how Cameron Road, I'm putting aside the construction challenges, but in terms of what we were trying to achieve in the design. And it would have been so easy just to say, oh, let's not take on the fight in that and just agree with what people were proposing. So for me, maintaining that vision, that outcome has been most important then in terms of the application for other initiatives. There's still a few planting things to go, and I couldn't let it go, but that'll get dealt with in due course. I'd also like to pick up, and Nick, you talked about the innovation in terms of the remote vehicle, in terms of the outfall. What I'd like to think that we've helped create as commissioners is creating that ongoing environment for innovation. And that's most important. And I have to say, I am more of the Pareto type principle, 80-20. We never get to having perfect information or understanding on everything. And at the end of the day, innovation, there is some risk. But as an organisation, and as you as the executive and staff, there's an inherent part of undertaking innovation, and there are some risks. And hopefully the new governance group understand and are prepared to take that. Fine, you've got to balance it and understand what potentially that risk could be, but it is important in terms of actually being innovative. And this is a quote from just talking about perfection. Lord Reith, who was chair of the BBC many decades ago. And a quote from him was, "Perfection is the enemy of the good." So I just, and it is, because notwithstanding being local government, it's actually making some judgment on the information that's before us and then getting on with life. I would just picking up on waters. I attended the celebration when the contract had been signed with the maintenance contract between Western Bay, the city, and Downers. And I think that really also set a scene in terms of staff looking at, notwithstanding the previous governance issues, had actually saw the opportunity across the two local government partners and actually got on of what was best for the city and the sub-region. So I really just wanted to acknowledge that on the way past. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Thanks, Nick, for the report. I just kind of wanted to follow on the same theme as I suppose the others about the innovation. And when we first arrived, Linksav was hot, I suppose, from a community point of view. And we faced a lot of that, going out there, talking to the community. And I suppose the two areas of innovation for Linksav was trying to get better engagement, get a better connection, and developing a better relationship with that community, particularly the one that was, Linksav, the residents, directly impacted by a doubling of the number of vehicles travelling through that corridor and the safety issues that community faced. So working with the community, setting up the community panel and working through the panel and enabling the panel to come up with ideas and different ways of approaching that issue that would ultimately suit their needs. I think from an innovation point of view, those are the types of things that I think from a commission point of view would like to see a bit more of. Community coming up with solutions to some of those big problems that we have. So from a transport point of view, and then also the work that the staff are doing in the background, given we've got closure and modelling and testing other ways in which we could potentially open up the corridor for those residents. So picking up on some of those, some of that innovation. And then probably the other one I just wanted to note was the Water Watchers program, given we had sprinkler bans and all those kinds of things over a number of summers, but actually refocusing the conversation for the community about how we value water and putting water at the centre of the conversation rather than my personal need for water. But actually we need to protect and look after our water resources, that we do have good supply and good use now, but also into the future. And seeing that program and what it did to manage, I suppose, the demand for water over those periods when we did have low flow. Bearing in mind, we've just brought on the Waiari scheme, but even with Waiari coming on, we do need to think about and value water differently and use water differently. So yeah, I just wanted to echo, I suppose, everybody else's comments. But that innovation isn't just for, it's right across the organisation. We've seen it right across the organisation. So I just wanted to highlight those things.
I'm just going to, as the staff have been restricted to 3 minutes, although Nick took longer than 3 minutes, I'm now going to restrict commissioners to small comments, because otherwise we'll be here and we've got an important lunch date to celebrate Marie. So that brings us to community services.
Oh, thank you. Yes, community services. I guess I'm reflecting that even though we've got the community services group has that community in its name, everybody here is here for the community, and I think just your commentary reflects that. But we get to do the cool stuff. So I guess I could talk about the many projects that we've had over the 3 years, where we have put in new parks, we've repaired Manawa Falls, we've done, many projects. But I've decided not to, because you've been to probably just about every single one of the openings, or the significant ones have come to a report to you as commissioners. So I'm going to move on. But I guess Spaces and Places do the projects for a lot of the organisation. Moving on to the next slide, which is coming, is it? Is events. So, the events, we've got an events team, we've got Bay Court, we've got the Historic Village, we've got the library, we've got our ComDev team, all run events for the city in a whole range of areas, from inclusive cities, welcoming people to our city, and just generally having fun, celebrating how long the 40 years for a Bay Court. So really cool fun. I'm not going to focus on that either, because you've probably been to most of those events. What I would like to focus is on the next slide. And the next slide, as it comes up, really shows 3 aspects of our group that's either new or substantially different than what it was 3.5 years ago. So the Tauranga Museum, I think, getting a museum in Tauranga has been something that many people in our community have wanted for a very, very long time. I've got staff that have been waiting 20 plus years for this museum, and every day they're getting a little bit more excited that just might happen. I do remember coming to the Bay over to the Bay. I went to Whakatane about 19 years ago and met a Tauranga resident who was then very upset about the latest decision to cancel it. So a lot of people waiting a very long time. We've got a project plan up and running. The staff we're slowly building up staff to ensure that when we open in 2028, that we've got a museum that is nationally and potentially internationally recognised. And we've already just started recently getting community support. We've got around 700 people signed up for Friends of the Museum. That's legit now, and it's a legit number now. Emergency management, always been something that councils are responsible. We've got legal responsibilities to deliver civil defence emergency management, and the focus usually is on readiness and response. About a little bit longer than your tenure, but probably 3 to 4 years ago, we relied very much on Western Bay. We had a joint EOC, or Emergency Operating Centre, with Western Bay, and it's fair to say that because Western Bay were leading it, we weren't really delivering on our responsibility to be able to respond to an emergency, particularly in a big emergency, if one happened in the city. So we decided to take that back in-house, and over probably 3.5 to 4 years, we've gone from, I think, about 30 partially trained people to having 5 professionals in the emergency management team, and a team of staff of 100 people who right now today could come into our emergency operating centre and do their job. It's obviously not something that we do all of the time or regularly. So, there's always a bit of nervousness when you go in the EOC the first time, but these people have been substantially trained and would be ready to go. And of course, last, city operations. This is something that the Commission did support. We have slowly over the last 2 years brought in-house a lot of our activities that we would have historically had contracts for. So that part of that's just operational. We had a contract and our staff are delivering. We had to set up a business, really, everything. We had to buy the equipment, we had to set up a structure, we had to set up a depot. And so the guys and girls, 40, I think it's about 50-50 guys and girls, which is a pretty cool statistic. So we've set up a business, and we, on the 1st of July this year, will have all of the substantial contracts back in-house and a lot of small ones as well. There's still a couple that will come into house next year. But what I think I'm most proud of, and what is just, and it's represented in that photo, is it's more than that activity of just mowing the lawn. It's what we really were looking for from this team, is to be our ambassadors, to actually go out there and actually have pride in our city, look for opportunities to do things better. And the team have done that. I think the compliments we get from the community has been overwhelming. We've had people buy them scones, we've had people buy them ice creams. That's such a tiny thing, but for somebody in the community to go out and do that, I think it represents the passion that team have. And I just guess I want to end on the fact that this wasn't about cost savings. This wasn't about being efficient and spending less. As a city, we had spent years and years driving down contract prices, so we got the cheapest deal. This is about ensuring that our team here look after our city like we would our own front yards, and have our community proud of the way our city looks. So that's me.
Barbara, the only two I just want to echo the way the city's looking at the moment compared to what we found when we came here. Really is a testament to the passion and the determination that team have brought to it. It really is looking good, and it looks as if someone cares about the city, which it certainly did when we came. Two projects that stand out for me. When we were appointed, we came into, I forget what it was called, over in the Mount, and it was changing the way streets were used. Something like that. But I just remember getting all these emails from people. We were going to lose 500 car parks, and the whole place was up in arms. And out of that came the walkway along the Marine Parade there, and along that beachfront. And I remember I had to go and see where Tay Street was, because it kept coming up in the emails. And I was just amazed that you either had to walk on the beach or you had to walk on the other side of the road, and there was no way for people to walk along that beach without having to go down onto the sand. And I kept thinking, what if you had a pushchair? What if you had a wheelchair? What if, where were you going to ride your bike? Your kid's going to ride their bike. So that project, which has just been so well used, and so many people, has brought joy to so many people. The design of it is fantastic. And it was done so quickly, and it was done again with good support from the community and good funding from the community. And the other project is the Destination Skate Park, and it's the collaboration and the design of that has involved the skating community, and then the wide community funding that's come in to support that, so much so that we were able to conclude the extra 2 stages in that. So those are the 2 projects. There's been lots and lots of things, small things, big things, but those 2 stand out. And the common theme is that we've worked alongside the community to develop those. And that's the key thing that's coming. It doesn't matter whether it's transport, whether it's water, whether it's spaces and places. Having that community involvement has made an enormous difference. And as a result, the organisation, which was very inward looking when we came, has flowered and is looking outward and is confident enough to work alongside the community. And that's an enormous change. So congratulations to all your team. You're right, they get all the fun things, but they've done a good job with those fun things. Shad.
Thanks, Barbara. Just a couple of points from me. Just reading through the report, but also reflecting on the last 3.5 years, particularly from a heritage point of view, picking up the point you made about the museum development over the next 3 to 4 years, and seeing that come to fruition, but also the work that the museum team are now doing to promote, and people really interested in coming through the collection and understanding what Tauranga have been, or actually what Tauranga City hold, that's of local, regional, but also of national significance. So a real demand and a real desire, I think, for the community to actually understand our story. And that's probably the other part of it. So all the work we've done on Mowal about placemaking, the work we've done up at Omanawa Falls around placemaking, and actually being able to celebrate and tell our stories in different ways. And that connects through into Gareth's area down in the city centre. And as Anne and Stephen often comment that coming here in the absence of that history being told and that history being celebrated, now we see a lot more of it across our city, our city centre, but also right across our public spaces. So I just really want to commend the team in terms of shifting that, changing and flicking that dial, so that we do have a city worth celebrating, and we do have a city worth recognising for the contribution it makes locally, regionally and nationally.
Two or three comments, and I think, Barbara, in terms of what you've outlined and what's contained in the executive report, it's about that common theme of people, because we can have all the roads and pipes and structures in the city, but what brings it together and is the glue are people. And in terms of what's happened in places and spaces, museums, other initiatives that you've outlined, it's important in terms of providing those opportunities, the ability for people to gather, meet, recreate, or just enjoy the environment we've got. So really just acknowledging, and I think in the last 3.5 years, that very strong focus in terms of people. It's absolutely critical. So wanted to acknowledge that. And also just talking about city operations, while you said it's only operational, it's actually been very, very key in terms of that opportunity to maintain and improve and develop what we have. And I've always, when it started, compared the city to the Hamiltons of the world and the Rotoruas, of how well they look after a lot of their public spaces and reserves and all of that. And I see that whole city ops in terms of picking that up. They do have that passion, and it's very visible throughout the city. So I think, and there's some more contracts to come, but really acknowledging the work and the difference that has made. And I think Anne made the comment, but the commentary around the city, that people can actually see, feel and touch the differences that have occurred. So really just like to acknowledge all of the team, but I just wanted to, I think in terms of that particular city operations has been a great initiative, and long may it continue.
Quick. But there is a school of thought out there that the responsibility of local government is on roads, rubbish and rates, I think is what they say. And those are really important functions. But actually the work of this division is about, as Bill says, people and communities. The thing that really struck me when I came here, I lived here for 3 years as I progressed through my career in the early 90s. And I never knew the story of Tauranga and its importance to the history of New Zealand, which is quite mind-blowing, really. And we will have an opportunity in Te Manawataki o Te Papa in the museum to put on the map Tauranga's place in the history of New Zealand. We go to Waitangi and we celebrate it up there, but this city is so significant. And to have lived here for 3 years and been completely unaware of that, it's been a great privilege of being a commissioner, because I was able to learn that history. And I look forward to coming to Tauranga as a great city in the future, just like we go to Europe and all of the other countries and look at great cities. We don't look at their roads, rates and rubbish. We look at their architecture, their history, their culture and their people. And I think we're on the road to making that happen here as well.
Thanks, Stephen. Chief Financial Officer, that's Catherine today.
Step into the role today. So our kind of vision for our team is enhancing the economy, doing a bit there, enabling investment and realising value. And it's been a big 3 years for us. So just going through the first kind of infrastructure, Joel, and the team is the airport, and always have to have a good graph. You'll see how the airport struggled through COVID, but it has more than recovered. And by the end of this year, have doubled passenger numbers from 2014. So associated with that, there's of course investment. Upgraded lighting is going in. It's to enhance daytime operations, obviously not nighttime landing, but is expected to really improve the reliability or the avoidance of those kind of missed landings and things like that. And also car parking. It's a very popular airport, and the master plan has looked at expanding the sort of amenity out there. So that's well underway to delivering 330 more car parks. Okay, next slide is the bulk of the team really working in finance and strategic and commercial property. So very much we've had 2 long-term plans and a long-term plan amendment in 3.5 years. And sitting behind that, there's a lot of work around prioritising the investment of the council to support the city and how to pay for it, and developing that financial strategy. And we have been innovative. We have, as a council, been the first to take on infrastructure funding and financing as a way of financing to support our very constrained balance sheet. And we have looked, again, the first council to really look at the extending the contribution from the commercial industrial sector, and most recently in that industrial rating category. So doing a lot of the work that supports paying a fair share. And not to mention, we have also embarked on some green borrowing through local government funding agency. Had to, again, have a good graph. So we're certainly using our balance sheet to the max to make sure we do the investment we need to, and looking at our financial management to make sure we remain prudent and sustainable. And within a lot of really good work within that strategic property team, looking for opportunities to support value in the community. And got a picture of the red shed as a brilliant opportunity in that respect. The asset realisation reserve, which will realise assets that aren't well used in favour of assets that will support the future of the city, and building some relationships and resolving some very difficult issues. And that includes our contribution within that to Manautaki, CCO and other matters. And then the last slide is the Marine Precinct, and recent announcement that the precinct will be sold, but there is also supporting investment around and the wharves, and there will be further investment through the private in maintaining connection with local industry. So that's us.
Catherine, well, I think really this has been the critical part of the work that the Commission have had to do. I mean, it was amazing to come and find that the rating structure was so poor, and that the bulk of the costs were falling on the residential ratepayer, and no wonder they were unhappy and concerned about their rates. And then that drove a whole lot of bad behaviour of, what we heard of keeping costs down, not investing, simply because the rating structure was so bad. And so that's one of the critical things that we've done since we've been here. And we've had tremendous support despite the fact that we have significantly increased the rates for our commercial and now our industrial sector. They have supported what we've been doing, largely because of the program of delivery that's come alongside it, and they can see that that money is being used to invest in the city for the future of the city. So do want to call them out. We've thanked them on a number of occasions, but your team, that finance team, to do 2 long-term plans and an amendment to the long-term plan and the annual plans, we know we put them under a lot of pressure, So we do want to say thank you through you, Catherine. But we've risen to that challenge, and I think that's all part of just understanding that we needed to do that. Again, if you go back to that slide, looking again the innovation to look for ways to do things differently, and I know Christine and her team with the initial work on the IFF, and people say, how do you get an infrastructure and funding financing levy for transport? But that's because transport is an enabler, and if you look at those 14 projects, they are enabling both people moving around our city, but enabling housing as well. And that was really the first time that we were able to put those two together. So the finance team, I know, has taken a lot of time to work through, and now we've been able to provide the government with 2 examples of how IFF levies can be used, but also some good examples of how they can streamline that legislation so that it works much better, because the current government are using it as a major plank for local government. So the only downside to that is it's still coming out of the same pockets of ratepayers, and there will come a time when ratepayers will not be able to continue funding at the rate. So between central government and local government, they do have to work through that. And again, I know the finance team are working through with central government and with our metro colleagues on a national, what do you call it, reverse mortgage opportunity that will enable people to realise their assets or their equity in their property and enable them to stay where they are, and even though they're facing increased costs. So an enormous amount of work being done by the finance team to try and prepare the council both for the investments that it needed to make, but also for the future. So really want to thank the team tremendously, and thank Ray for the extra parking at the airport, because it's now a lot easier to find a car park. Anyone else? Yep, Shad.
Yeah, I just wanted to support all those comments, but thinking about some of the other things we've done, like around the targeted rates to try and collect the DC shortfalls and those kinds of things, just approaching things differently and trying to, at the same time, create fairness in the system, so all ratepayers aren't necessarily paying the bulk of the burden. And then also the fees and charges. I know that kind of spread right across the organisation, and we did have that challenge in the last LTP with sports fields and those kinds of things. But at the end of the day, it's trying to get fairness in the system, that if I benefit, should others make a contribution possibly? But actually, where should the bulk of the cost lie? And we had that conversation this morning about boat ramps, and it's the same conversation that communities will continue to have. But I think just thinking about things differently, and we do have a great finance team. Jim's amazing thinking about rates in different ways, and I mean I'm quite a novice when it comes to this financing side of things, but I've learned a hell of a lot in the last 3.5 years. So I just really want to commend the finance team in terms of the work they've been doing.
No, okay. I was just going to say one more thing. What was that? I don't think we can pass over one of the other big innovations is actually using your assets wisely. So too often councils get stuck in this, we own this, therefore we have to keep it. And when we had a look at the assets that the council owned and questioned what are we holding these assets for, when they're actually of huge value and can be turned over to make better use of that value to the ratepayer. So that asset realisation program and process is really critical. And I think too many councils have sat on assets and not used them, and that's a lazy way of managing. No business would do that, would operate in that way. Just buying properties at the time you might need them, for certain projects, and then you don't subdivide and sell off the remainder, etc. So keeping that turning over and making sure that the assets that council own are well managed and are necessary enables you then when to buy strategic properties and do strategic works. And that's going to be critical for the funding of Te Manawa o Te Papa, which is a major investment for the city. And that's where the major asset could be, how the value of that asset will benefit the community. But there will come a time when other strategic purchases that we've made need to be unsold. So that's a constant process, and I think that's a big change that we've made. Okay, strategy, growth and governance.
So first area talking about is the direction. So prior to the commission starting, we didn't have a city vision, and there wasn't a clearly documented or current and easy accessible strategic approach for the council as a whole. There were a series of outdated strategies, mainly, and some significant gaps in some areas. So the vision for Tauranga process was commenced, and through that we got a city vision document, and then Our Direction project, which was more around Tauranga City Council and what our strategic focus and priorities were and how we were going to get there. That landed us with the kupinga, which is here, which is the 5 community outcomes about what we're looking to do. Our 3 approaches that are woven through all of that in terms of sustainability, te ao Māori, and working beyond Tauranga. And then the 40 action and investment plans that sat as part of that package. Some of them were updates of previous work, minor updates, some were substantive and some were new, and particularly the climate action investment plan was one where there was quite a gap and a lot of community involvement in the development of that. So what we have now is we have clarity on where we're going, clarity on what we want to achieve and why we want to achieve it, and then what are the actual specific steps, investments and action that we need to do to get there. And that's really laid the pathway for the long-term plan that's now in place. And I think in terms of having it for the incoming council to have that clarity is really important. So that was the strategy direction part. The next area I just wanted to talk about is really the urban development or urban housing and business. Significant progress in this area in terms of providing zoned and service land for both up and out and both residential and business land. Plan Change 33 was probably the main piece of work with some substantive decisions, and now really the Minister making a few final calls on a couple of matters. But that plan delivers intensification, which is a critical element of our growth strategy, and it won't happen overnight, but that change will happen over time. And in particular, it gives effect to the Te Papa spatial plan and the Otamoto spatial plans, which have been developed. The Tauranga variation of Plan Change 33 is a critical element of the greenfields. So that provides for circa 4,000 homes, and that together with the work that Nick talked about at Tauranga West enabling transport work to put the infrastructure in place to support that is a key step forward in terms of our housing supply. In that growth area, just also want to comment that we've spent a lot of effort in terms of advocacy and engagement with central government on a number of areas, but probably the one that stands out for me is the National Policy Statement of Freshwater, where the Commissioners also worked directly with ministers, and that's also some quite key and substantive changes made in that policy area that had a direct impact on progressing the Tauranga plan change. And then the urban design panel was also another area of focus. So I think overall what we've tried to do in this space is keep working on that complex jigsaw of zoning, funding, infrastructure planning and development feasibility with a view to getting tangible delivery on the ground. It's not something that we've mastered. There is still a housing shortfall predicted. It's an ongoing process, and we do need to continue to work with central government. And I know there's a report on today's agenda around city deals, which will be a critical element about actually putting that in place. And then the third area that I wish to talk about was our relationship with tangata whenua. And there's been some quite key milestones. Some of those relate to the matters that Shad spoke before that had been of concern to tangata whenua for some many years. So the Te Manawa o Te Papa deed signing and the shared ownership with the Tamatara Trust, which I think Gareth's going to talk about later. the return of the Te Pole land adjacent to Welcome Bay roundabout, the Manoa Falls access and the project providing ability for the community to experience that area. And then at your last council meeting, initiating the Whairoa future-proofing opportunity, all some key tangible steps in terms of progressing matters that are important to tangata whenua and also to the wider community.
Thanks, Christine. I think we do need to thank Jeremy. I mean, we gave him a bit of a hard time getting through 40 asset and what are the action and investment plans, and we all groaned every time he came to strategy, finance and risk. But having done it and being able to hand on that taonga, if you like, to an incoming council with, as you say, very clear vision for what we want to achieve, why we want to achieve, and how we're going to achieve that is really important. And I think the final strategy, finance and risk tomorrow has then how we're going to measure whether we are successful, which is the complete package of it all. But a lot of those values had already been established with the community before we came. It was a matter of pulling all that together. I know the top ones on Te Kupenga were already in place, but Tauranga Together We Can, and we haven't said it probably a lot enough. But actually what we have been doing for the last three and a half years is actually trying to give life to that, because as we've talked about before, it's all of us working together. So thanks Jeremy for that. It is frustrating the time. I made a submission to the select committee on the fast track. I know it's quite contentious on the fast track consenting. From an environmental point of view, look, I do understand that, but from a housing point of view, I made the point it takes 10 years to get from deciding that land is going to be used for housing to actual construction, and 7 of those years are, that's if you're lucky, and there's no it doesn't get off to the Environment Court, and 7 of those years are involved in the planning and consenting process, and that's just too long. It's too long for Tauranga, where we have a housing crisis and we're 8,000 odd houses short now, and growing each year, but it's too long for New Zealand, where too many people aren't able to either rent or buy their own home. And so if the government can find a way to ameliorate some of the concerns around the environment, we do need to have better processes, faster processes for housing. And I want to thank the team that have worked with us as we've gone through those different plans. It must be just as frustrating for them as it is for us, of how long it takes to do things. But their professionalism and their passion for it, I guess, we've been able to achieve quite a lot. But you're right to signal that relationship with central government is going to be critical going forward, as they shape up their legislation. Bill.
And certainly agree with what you've outlined, Chair. I just wanted to pick up on 1 or 2 matters, and really compliment the team in terms of, we have the strategic direction, we've got spatial plans, we've got plan changes with action investment plans, and I agree with Anne in terms of the raft of those. I thought, wow, will this ever end? But it's great to see the connection between them, and that is actively implemented and promoted, as opposed to, because often these documents are developed and all well and good, but they end up being quite siloed. So really acknowledging in terms of then the implementation, well, the development of them that has that integration, but certainly then the subsequent implementation. And as an example, pleasing to see those action investment plans being referenced as a touchstone in the reports that we're actually getting, along with the spatial plans and that. So I think taking that wider view, because probably one of the criticisms I have of my own profession is that everything begins and ends in terms of the RMA. Well, it doesn't. It's but one approach. So acknowledging the great work of the team in that space. And I think as part of that is that increasing outward focus of the organisation back out into those groups, those interest groups and the community in terms of the planning work and the thinking that it's actually going on. So I really just wanted to note that, Christine, in terms of the team.
Just a quick one, really one of the key examples of the impact of that outreach, particularly to central government, was the recognition of the criticality of State Highway 29 as a project of national significance to government, but an enormous project of regional significance to the city, because it will enable much more efficient and effective connectivity to the port and to our industry within the city, but also unlocks the potential of the existing corridor to be a city shaping corridor. So I think that's a key milestone, and what we are seeing, what we have between all of us, I think, is strong recognition of the major projects that Tauranga needs in the regional transport strategy. That are top 5 of the top 7 projects, I think, are listed in the regional transport strategy. And the criticality of those projects now being delivered through the government policy statement and the funding that will come from the NLTF. A key mission, I think, of the new council has to be to continue those very positive and constructive. Sometimes you have to push, and it's right and proper that we do, but it's done in a collaborative way so that the city and central government can reap the rewards collectively. And the connection of the transport story with the growth story of the city has been a key step forward, I think, and it needs to continue.
Thanks, Christine. Just a couple of comments from me. Just really want to commend the Takawanga team in terms of the work they've been doing or have done. I think when we first started, we made an early decision around DC's, funding for public hiring, and then also the RFR policy, which I understand had been developed under previous councils, and so coming through to the commission and for the commission to sign that off, and then now to work it through the asset realisation process, I think has been worthwhile. But also want to acknowledge, tangata whenua contribution into all of the decision-making process. We've got the working groups, the Rangapu, the Waiari Water Scheme, the Mowal Trust. I mean, there's a myriad of opportunities for tangata whenua to participate in decision-making, which is a requirement under the LGA. And they're being well supported by the Takawanga through those processes. So, yeah, just really want to acknowledge and commend the team. Supporting the decisions that ultimately the Commission had made, but also an incoming council will make.
I forgot to mention the democracy team. How can we manage without the democracy team? To Coral and her staff, thank you. Even to getting us coffee to keep us going through council meetings. But no, we've really appreciated all the support that we've had from the democracy team running the meetings, making sure we've got the right papers in the right time and the right order. Really appreciate it. So thank you for that. Okay, one more. Is it corporate services? Three more. Well, why don't we have a stand up, because we're over our 2 hours. Just a very quick one. We've got to be finished soon. We're right on lunchtime, so let's go.
Services. Rather than talk to the slides, I'd just like to talk to the Commission just for 5 minutes instead. The organisational culture is the way that we share values and beliefs. And normally when you have a change of leadership, you begin to change that culture, whether it's for good or for bad. When we started, we didn't even know how to measure these things. We had turnover, but we now know how to measure engagement. We know how to measure exactly where teams are struggling. So from an organisational health perspective, and acknowledging that people are our greatest asset, and that's reflected in a lot of the discussions, the organisation is in good shape. And I think it is in part a testament to the work that you've been doing, that it is in good shape. Chad talked a lot about innovation, and innovation doesn't turn up unless staff are confident. And while you can see that in the turnover, if turnover is low, staff are becoming confident. The Commission didn't start at that point. It took time for those results to bed in. And so what we see is more and more innovation, more confidence coming through from our teams that Barbara and Sarah will speak to, and Nick. But those are measures that we not only didn't have, but we knew we've seen improvement. And I'd say that's the legacy that you've left, that the organisational culture is strong and we know how to continuously improve. From a confidence perspective, that translates into the way we engage the community, and the media impact score is perhaps the best one. The media impact score is about 2.4. Now, that isn't a local government measure. That's a measure you see in the private sector around industries like tourism or telecommunications. 1.8 is from a media perspective where local government's at. So the benchmark that the Commission leaves in terms of the way the confidence is translating to the community is that your expectations are higher than where local government is in New Zealand generally.
I want to put up the next slides to show what you're talking about.
So this is an example of how we're using data to measure the outcomes that we've committed to deliver to our community. We weren't doing that. It's something I know Stephen's been big on, but also the translation of innovation in terms of the use of technology to tell stories. And storytelling has been a big part of the Commission's remit. And if you go over the last 2 slides, I think that's all connected to storytelling as well. Whoever has control of the slides. Yep, nothing wrong with the smiley face roundabout.
No.
22,000 people and 100% positive reactions. We need to capitalise on those, and that's where confidence from staff comes from. And the last slide, it's just a summary of the stories we've told. And again, that comes from confidence in staff and stability in leadership, and a reflection of our culture as well.
Yep, there's not much to say to that because I mean, in some of the conversations that I've had with potential candidates and candidates that have come in and talked to me, that they've asked about the organisation. What is the state of the organisation? It's been an absolute pleasure to be able to say it's in a great state. It's grown substantially, both in confidence and in size, because we've brought contracts back in, and we've expanded the transport department, etc. As we've expanded the capital project plan, but they have grown in confidence to get on and do their jobs, and it's in good heart. And you can and I've given the same advice. Have a look at the data on unexpected turnover. Yeah. That tells a story in itself. Anything else on that? Yep.
Thanks, Alice. Just wanted to make the comment as well, like looking up at that slide, that does not look like council activities, in terms of the work that the council does. The way we communicate, the way we connect with community. And I think it was one of the things that we were quite focused on when we first started, which was we need to be more outward focused. We need to be more engaged. We need to be more connected. And the organisation, I think, is now in a better place because of the work that it does in connecting and engaging with the community. The Commission did front a lot of that along with staff. But from a personal perspective, I think there's a lot of confidence in the organisation that it is a great place to work. There are great people in the organisation and we are doing some great things in the community.
It doesn't much look like council, does it? Stephen.
I recall when we first came here, some of the key questions we had in the long-term plan were how many staff were being added over the next 10 years, and it seemed from those questions that the measure of performance of successful governance was how you managed to cut costs and cut staff numbers. Well, we did precisely the opposite. We increased the staff and capacity of the organisation. And that is how you shift from doing $100 million capital investment and OPEX associated with that to doing $450 million, and you catch up on years and decades of underinvestment. And I'm pleased to say that I think the organisation has just gone from strength to strength of getting the right expertise on board. I think there's a statistic, something like 1/3 or 40% of the staff now employed have only worked with the Commission. I just hope that they have come on board and enjoyed the change that has come through delivering projects and focused on delivery rather than planning. I think it's a testament to the staff and the calibre of the team that we now have. And I think the new council can come in very confident that they have a group of people right across the organisation who know what they have to achieve, know how to go about it, and the money is there to support them to have the right staff, resources and capability to be able to deliver.
Okay. Environmental regulation. Sarah.
It's really hard to put regulatory delivery into pretty pictures, but we can do numbers. And I think the report in front of you really highlights the significant amount of work that's been delivered over the last 3 years. We have those headlines that you know about, over 2,000 consents delivered, resource consents, over 10,000 building consents delivered. But there's also all of those other things that a council has to do. We've inspected over 3,000 pools, registered over 6,000 dogs every year, 90,000 building inspections have been done, 3,500 liquor licence applications processed and 12,500 limbs. And I think this speaks to the point that's just been talked about around resourcing and capacity and making sure we have the staff with the skills to do the job that you've needed us to do. There's been some real highlights in there. You've been really clear with us that we need to improve our levels of service. We've gone from 75% to 90% timeliness for resource consents, 45% to 75% in building consents. We're not there yet, but it's a really good pathway. The next picture is probably the only photos that we've got, but it highlights our pound upgrade. If we could have that slide. And that's been something that you were really clear about at the start of the tenure, that we needed a pound that was fit for purpose, both for the animals, but also for the staff that work there. It's taken some time to get there, but we're nearly there. We've got the extension of the reception you can see there, some wonderful new areas for dog exercising, and also the next stage that'll be delivered, hopefully before the end of the year, will be a new vet and nurse area, which is really important to make that a better place, as I said, for animals and staff. And finally, there's a graph up there that I thought would be good to speak to, and Shad, you spoke about Links Ave, and that this figure in my mind shows how important it is to have your organisation linked up to deliver what you needed to be delivered on Links Ave, a change in behaviour, a change in the use, so that the community had their asset working the way it was intended to work. It was hard for our enforcement staff. You can see right at the beginning of implementation there, the number of tickets that were having to be issued, infringements. But over time we got there. So almost, 9,000 infringements issued at the beginning of that process. And now we're next to zero. And we've got a community and a school that can use that road the way it needed to be.
Thanks, Sarah. And certainly we have been on the case since we've been on the side of the table in terms of, for example, building and resource consent performance, but really want to acknowledge in terms of the team, including yourself, listening and actually addressing in terms of how this council goes about its performance in those areas. And for a lot of people, it's maybe one of the only but key interfaces they have with the council. So that response, that improvement in performance, and actually having the right resources at the right time in the right place to actually then deliver on our responsibilities. So I really just wanted to acknowledge that. And let's face it, any regulatory and enforcement roles, they are just getting tougher and tougher. There's a lack of patience, there's a lack of respect often out in the communities. So that operating environment becomes more and more challenging. But certainly the team, in my views, significant improvements since we've started, and certainly heading in that very positive direction in what often is really difficult space. So well done to the team.
I want to call out a couple of figures. $3.6 billion of building work consented. That's phenomenal. That's just phenomenal. And the other one is over 4,000 freedom camping infringements issued. And that's something we don't hear a lot about. And we've made the comment here that we have a huge range of freedom camping places. People still abuse them. And so often we get criticised because, we haven't taken action. That's normally more to do with homelessness than freedom camping. But clearly the team are watching the freedom campers and moving them on, or at least giving them the infringement notices when so do what echo Bill's comments, because a lot of this is unseen work that just happens and people expect it to happen and don't take any notice of it. I mean, if you've got 5,000 noise complaints, people don't worry about the council's ability to do that until they have the big party happening next door, and at 3 o'clock in the morning they're desperate for help. And it's good to know that our guys are there, so thank you. Right, last but not least, is it city developments?
Yes, lucky last. This is only the second time in the last 3.5 years I've actually written a speech to say in chambers instead of scribbles in my trusty notebook. I called my first speech back in 21 the Soulless City speech, but I'll see how this one goes before I give it a name. So, kia ora, commissioners. I think it's fitting that at our last official council meeting, we're breaking from the tradition of tabling our exec report as read, and instead we're shining a bit more light on some of the important things that we've all collectively achieved over the last 3+ years. I wanted to speak to 3 things in my couple of slides, the first being partnerships. There's numerous projects and initiatives that I could speak to that demonstrate your genuine commitment to creating partnerships with longevity. My favourite, and one of the most meaningful projects I've worked on here at TCC, was creating a partnership with Mana Whenua over the shared ownership of the Te Manawa-Taki o Te Papa land. We had the opportunity with that project to not only create a platform for the delivery of some amazing community and civic amenity projects, which I'll speak about in a minute, but we had the chance to reconcile a historical land grievance and restore mana to Hapuaniwi, so that plans to restore our city's heart could begin with certainty and confidence. As the Prime Minister said on the day we signed the agreement, thank you for the gift that you're providing, because this allows us to answer to future generations, what did you do in response to the wrongs of the past? I've got another photo here, which I think speaks incredibly well to the spirit of partnerships. The Mount Skate Park is a project that's only been open for a couple of weeks and has already been inundated with use, which clearly speaks to community need. The really cool thing about this project, however, is that it was co-designed with the community for the community. And just as importantly, it was co-funded with the community for the community. The council made an early commitment to fund stage 1 and 2, but then community funding partners came on board and committed to funding stage 3 and 4. In total, over 55% of the project. I think this project speaks perfectly to the city vision that CJ mentioned earlier, and you helped create with our community, Tauranga. Together we can. Secondly, and the next slide, I wanted to talk about aspiration. In all of your dealings over the last 3+ years, you've had an aspiration for our city to be better than it was before. We all know there's been a consistent and prolonged underinvestment in infrastructure. Refer my 2021 Solar City speech. But you made a clear commitment early on to do something about it. Te Manawa o Te Papa will be transformational for our city centre, revitalising our city's heart and breathing life back into our city centre. It will deliver some desperately overdue civic and community amenity and will give people a reason, among many that already exist, to come into our city and stay. The redevelopment of our waterfront will see concrete and tar seal replaced with grass and gardens. It will see enhanced opportunities for people to connect with the harbour in a way that is benefiting a city lucky enough to have a beautiful harbour right on its doorstep. What you've worked to achieve is normalising investment, setting an expectation that as residents of this awesome city, we deserve to have places and spaces and infrastructure that we're proud of, that we deserve to have a city centre that is genuinely a great place to live, learn, work, play and visit. And speaking of living in our city centre, next slide, this is what $220 million of investment into residential accommodation looks like. That was the before. And next slide, that's the after. That's what change and progress looks like. Next slide, on a smaller scale and in the public realm, this is what change and progress looks like. It's such an innocuous space, but it speaks to the need and want to change the places we spend time in, to make them better, safer, greener, more sustainable, more people-focused. Looking for those opportunities to showcase what makes our city special, like connections to the harbour, to make them into places and spaces that we're proud of. And finally, I thought I'd finish with this photo, because for me, trains speak to the concept of a journey and miniature trains speak to fun. So this photo speaks to me of enjoying the journey. We've all collectively worked incredibly hard over the last 3+ years, but we've also had some fun along the way. It hasn't all been unicorns and rainbows. You've definitely challenged us as an organisation, but we're better because of it. We're also better as a city and community for your tenure, one that I personally think can be defined by action, not inaction, decisiveness, not indecisiveness, outcomes, not outputs, and service, not self-service. I did a presentation the other day to a group of real estate agents and received an email afterwards that I thought nicely summed up where we're at. That said, I was fascinated and excited to hear and see the changes that are taking place in our city. I mentioned to several colleagues when I returned to the office that hearing and seeing what you're planning and actually delivering at last made me proud to be a resident of Tauranga. So that's my quick kōrero, except to say thank you for your vision, thank you for your passion for our city, thank you for your wise governance, and thank you all for your very hard work. We do hope you've created enough momentum to propel Tauranga into becoming the city that it deserves to be. So ki ngā komihana e mahi ana mō tō mahi taumaha ki tō mātou taha kia ora.
Thanks, Gareth. Don't know what to say. Nothing. Nothing. No questions. Well, no, I think we all know well the work that's in the centre city. I'm looking forward to coming back at Christmas time and seeing that most of that waterfront open and packed with people. Bill.
Thanks, Gareth, the reminder about your Solar City speech, because I don't think all the commission were in a car with you, but certainly some of us were. You were recapping on some of that. So I've never it's always been at the back of my mind, hence my interest earlier on in terms of commentary around people and spaces and people coming together. So, it wasn't wasted at all. I'd just like to pick up in terms of the partnership, and you've referenced examples, but I think that application applies across the organisation in terms of partnerships, because at the end of the day, they are key, and it's actually having others helping us in the broadest council sense deliver on what we need to deliver, but also using that expertise and knowledge that is out in the community. And I think that's absolutely key. And I think the organisation has moved significantly in that space. And just my final comment, every time I hear from someone or speak with someone who was on your city centre presentations, great job. And in terms of the messaging getting through, really, really well. So I'd just like you to comment on that. And I've been on the train a number of times with my grandson since that photo. Well done.
Thanks, Gareth. I was at a conference the other day, and I was kind of opening it. It was the Māori Business Network conference. And one of the things I commented on is driving around the city, or coming across the bridge. I mean, I get a real thrill looking at it across the city, the skyline, and seeing all the cranes and the development that's occurring in our city centre. I also mentioned about cones. Cones are using Stephen's analogy, are a sign of progress, but cranes are also a magnificent sign of progress across our city. I suppose from a council point of view, one of the things I think we've been conscious of is setting the conditions for others to invest in our city centre, and we're now seeing that come to life. But really just want to commend our city development team, all of the work that's going on across the city centre, our city centre partners, whether that's with Downtown Tauranga, and all the businesses investing in our city centre. I think in 10 years' time, I mean, I'd love to reflect and look back at where we've come from and seeing all the development that has been planned and set to continue over the next 10 years.
So we just need to receive the report, don't we? You move that, Bill, and Stephen second. I'll put that. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against, carried. And thank the staff, executive, for presenting those. It's a huge record of work that we're very proud of, all of us very proud of. I do have to go back. I omitted to resolve that we receive the petition. So I have a resolution that the petition from Bevan Harrington on the boat ramp fees and charges be received and referred to the staff for report for the incoming council. Shad, you happy to move that? And Bill seconds. All those in favour say aye. Against, carried. And we have a resolution on Hairini, from Nick, which is that council endorses a trial of opening Hairini Street slip lane to general traffic between 7 p.m. to 6 a.m. You're going to close it all day. 7 p.m. to 6 a.m. 7 days per week. So it's closed all day.
Closed all day.
I thought we were just going to close it during peak traffic in the morning. 6 till 9 or 6 till 10 in the mornings.
And then open the west.
Yeah, here comes Sean.
So the idea of doing it as a trial is that we get to understand a little bit more the behaviours. So there is a risk that people use it as a as a rat run in quite an unsafe manner to get around that intersection.
Okay.
So we'll
So you want to
open it up
start with
within
it in the
this,
evening?
and then we can
Assess
monitor
it?
and move it
Okay.
around.
So,
We are speaking there about a reassessment by the year end, so we will run it for a few months and see how that works. And of course, a continuous assessment on the road safety issues, because that's why it was closed in the first place, because that the crossing of the 3 lanes.
okay, all right.
Yeah, so there
So
are
if I read out
safety
the whole
issues there that
thing.
we need to be aware of.
Yep, council endorses a trial of opening Hairini Street slip lane to general traffic between 7 p.m. to 6 a.m. 7 days per week, subject to the Tangata Whenua Committee passing a proposal to that effect on the 12th of June 2024. And this will be done under the Land Transport Rules Street Layout 2023 as a pilot to inform the long-term solution. And then you want really C, road safety aspects will be continuously monitored during the trial and a reassessment reported to council in December 24. This pilot can be in place for a maximum of up to 2 years. So I think just put those 2 in C. I'm happy to move that because I can read it. And that just tidies that up. Okay.
Yeah, that's cool. Thank you.
So moved and seconded. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against carried. Okay. So thank you, Sean. Thank you, Sean. That brings us to city and regional deals. Todd, you've been extremely patient through the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And actually, I appreciate your comments, but certainly from a personal perspective and also in a more professional context as the Chair of Priority One, listening to that executive report and the insights and responses by yourselves as commissioners only reinforced to me why Priority One has been such a supporter of the commissioners from day one. And I want to put on record our organisation's appreciation for your collective effort in progressing this city so significantly over the last 3.5 years. So, regional deals and city deals. Would you like to start, Christine, or how would you like? I'll defer to you to perhaps frame up, and then I can respond to any further comments that you may wish from a Priority One perspective.
Bit of an introduction, as some of these reports previously, because of need, have been in public excluded. So in terms of the city deal, I think the key thing is that it offers an opportunity for the sub-region to work in partnership with central government, and it really is around identifying, addressing and ultimately achieving in areas of key priority. So the sub-region collectively, TCC specifically, and agencies like Priority One have taken as many steps as they can to implement the strategies that we've all agreed between ourselves and with central government. That includes the Urban Form and Transport Initiative, the Transport System Plan, Smart Growth, and the Western Bay Economic Strategy. So we've worked hard to get alignment, but what's been become more and more clear is that unless we are working actively in partnership together, and that's cohesive, we won't deliver on the outcomes. So everyone's sort of doing their own thing as best they can, and we work together, but actually all of us need to work together. And so the city deal is an opportunity to actually focus on alignment of investment, to work on funding and financing pathways, so opening up barriers and getting alignment and funding and financing pathways, and also policy and legislation for growth enablement. So it's not just about money, it's about money and pathways, and all of those things need to work together. And then all of the agencies that are involved, whether it's central government, the business community, or local government, also taking their own actions to make sure that everything comes together. So that's really what a city deal offers, opportunity for collective achievement rather than continuing to work in separately on all matters. So I think that's probably the context that I'd like to set.
And Madam Chair, just in addition, from a Priority One perspective, as you are all aware, we have been working with this council and other regional councils, and the district council as well, to be part of that alignment that Christine talks about as to what this region needs, what the priorities should be, and working in support of you as commissioners in your engagement with the previous government and now the incoming government or the new coalition government to position Tauranga as a priority for critical investment to improve New Zealand's economic performance. And I think that's one message that I'd really like to leave today, is that this opportunity for a regional city deal is not just enabling the Western Corridor, enabling housing, achieving the conditions for business to invest with confidence and security here in the Bay of Plenty. But because of the role that we have in the broader New Zealand economic story, it becomes a critical part, I think, of New Zealand's growth story over the next 5 or 10 years. So from our perspective, from Priority One's perspective, this is an absolutely critical priority for the incoming council to ensure that we can be shoulder to shoulder negotiating with a government who has signalled that they are prepared to put together a deal over 5, 10, 15 years, which gives that investment surety, that releases new models of funding and finance to be applied not only in this city, in this critical region, but other critical regions as well in this country. And I think we've got an opportunity to be at the front of the queue to demonstrate, because of the sorts of comments that you collectively have been making over the last hour, that this city has got itself sorted. It has got clear strategic clarity. It's got alignment of the critical players, including private sector, and we are a good city to invest with over the long term. And we, of course, will do everything we can in Priority One to progress that with the new council.
Todd, and I think on behalf of the Commission, I think we do want to pay or to thank Priority One for taking the lead in this. It is an economic. There's a lot of talk around city and regional deals being a money tree, and councils are talking about it as we've met and talked with our colleagues about it being a way to fund a whole lot of stuff that local government's struggling to fund. Well, it isn't about that. They aren't about that. And when you look at them as they've developed through the UK and again in Australia, they're about how that relationship between the Crown and local government can work together to create certainty, to create investment, and therefore economic growth. And if you come back to that all the time, and Priority One have been really good at bringing us back to that. So working alongside our council team, I'm confident that we are the most advanced in the country with our preparation for and our work with central government and our thinking around that, around a possible city deal, city regional deal. It is a sub-regional deal, and we've worked hard with our colleagues. I want to pay tribute to both Western Bay and the Regional Council who've worked with us as we've developed all this up with the Crown. The Crown's been a bit busy, I think, getting its budget sorted, but now our hope is that I think the Prime Minister came and visited Tauranga and said we'd be the first cab off the rank. We deserve to be the first cab off the rank, and we're delighted that Priority One is giving the lead to that, because I think it is important that it isn't just seen as the council and the Crown. It has to involve the private sector as well, because they need the certainty that those other two government agencies are committed. They need that certainty going forward. So I think Priority One and the economic lens is the right one for us. So thank you very much. I don't have any questions because I know quite a lot about city deals, but it is good that we've been doing all this work since I think the beginning of the year. But we felt it was important now to bring it out into the open. It would be the worst kept secret that we've been doing this, but it does lay out the process from now. Next step is to get that agreement, if you like, between the Crown and the sub-region to do the deal, and then the hard work will be negotiating through. But Stephen, I think, has done a good job through the Regional Land Transport Program with our major infrastructure projects featuring highly. We hope when it goes down to the Wellington process, we know they reorganise it all, But we hope that that they remain at the top of the list because they're an integral part of the economic growth of this sub-region. So thank you. Appreciate that you've taken the lead of that organisation, and you will be the political face until we have a new mayor and council in place. But we still expect to see you up there using your previous contacts.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Bill.
Happy to move.
Yeah, I keen to second the report as well, and probably just to make the other comment is that the suite of projects we're talking about aren't new and flash projects that are just kind of popping out of the woodwork. These are things that are known. I suppose I just kind of wanted to make that point because I'm aware that there'll be a number of potential candidates thinking about what this means, what this looks like, and whether there needs to be further conversations with the community. Well, to be frank, we've had conversations with the community about what the city needs, and it's about the package of activities, the package of investments that we've already had those conversations with community on that will likely fall into this package. So it's not like, as Anne says, a lolly scramble or money tree. It's actually stuff that's already known. And just picking up on Christine's point, it's those policy and those pathways that we're looking for to unlock the economic growth and potential that this sub-region requires.
Because part of what's being proposed is legislative changes to enable that economic growth. So they're just as critical as some of the infrastructure projects. It's changing the way the IFF levy works, for instance, which has been a painful process with quite rigid rules, which make it more difficult. So it's the infrastructure projects that are already on our books and already on the Crown books, and projects like Rangiuru and the port extension, etc. But it also contains ways in which the government and we can speed up some of those processes. Yeah. Stephen.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick comment. I had the privilege in my former role of Chief Executive of Infrastructure New Zealand looking at city and regional deals across the world, and those countries that perform particularly well economically, but also typically socially as well, because the two go hand in glove, are those that are aligned nationally and locally. You think of the Scandinavian countries in particular, but there are the Singapore's, numerous examples across the country. Scotland had a fantastic planning framework, which then became the core of their central direction. Ireland had their national development plan, which was born of a requirement from the EU that if they were going to get any money, they had to have a very clear and agreed and aligned plan. And I think what this city deal, regional deal is about is not only having the plan, but linking that to the policy, legislative change and funding and financing tools that are necessary to deliver the plan. And it is very much about investment for growth. So we are investing for an economic dividend that can then flow across not only the city, but the country. So I think this is a really important initiative. It's an amazing opportunity. And we talk of Tauranga together we can. If we can work as a region with central government, then we could really make a difference. So I'm really looking forward to seeing this evolve. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll put the motion then and we're receiving the report and endorsing staff to continue work on the city regional deal with key partners and government. All those in favour say aye. Against, carried. Thanks, Todd. Thank you. Okay, so that brings, thank you. So that brings us then to the final report, our final report to the Minister of Local Government. And those documents are being tabled now, today. Kashi, thank you. Done a great job. Really appreciate it.
Kia ora koutou commissioners, through the chair. Today's report is really presenting to you the final report from the Commission to the Minister of Local Government. It is a legislative requirement, which means that we have specific requirements of things that we need to include. And it does provide an opportunity to report back on the terms of reference that you were provided for your term. It's an opportunity to highlight some of the achievements that the Commission and the Council have managed to make towards the challenges for the city, and some of those kind of opportunities to enhance and improve the city. And I think a lot of that has been discussed already this morning, so it's probably quite a nice fitting end to that process. Once approved today and subject to any amendments that the commissioners might like, it will be provided to the minister, who in turn will provide it back to the council as part of the process. So that's what we're here to do, and I'm happy to take any comments or questions on the report. Thank you.
Thanks, Katie. No, I think you've set it out really well. It's extremely readable, actually. We might even get the minister actually to read it. No, that's not fair. I'm sure he avidly read all of our reports. But it is a good final report. And as you say, the executive report that we've just listened to really adds nothing much more to this, because it expanded on a number of the things that we've included in here. But I really appreciate the work that you've done to get this to us today.
I'd also commend it, Chair, to those who are actually standing for election in terms of the information that is actually contained in here, in terms of giving a snapshot of what's occurred and what's proposed into the future. And do you want to take a move? I'm happy to move. We receive the briefing and then approve the incoming council.
The final report.
Yes.
Receive the final report and approve it. Yeah, this is the final report of the Commission to the Minister. Yeah. Okay, so Bill's moved. Your second, Stephen?
On recommendation.
Yep, sure.
Just a quick comment as well. I think on page 6 of the summary of governance related risks and tasks in the last column, and in the conversation we've been having most of this morning, I mean, it does highlight, I suppose, one of the key issues that we've faced and we haven't managed to solve. But I think a lot of the challenges are beyond council, and that's in that housing supply area. We've made significant improvements across the board. Some are still to be worked through by an incoming council, but for an incoming council, I think that's probably the most critical. But also our transport and how we manage it.
Yep. All right, so moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. So then that brings us to the briefing to the incoming council. And we chose to do this because that final report really is looking back at our terms of reference and what we've done. But we felt that it was important for the incoming council to get our thoughts on where we felt the city should continue to go, particularly around growth, and reflecting on the work that we've had to do in the past three and a half years. And I think we've set it out well for them. I'm pleased that we've included at the back the jigsaw puzzle, because that's going to be the hardest, I think, for any incoming council, is trying to understand. It's such, and I keep saying, it's a really complex beast, and it's a jigsaw puzzle, or is it Jingo stack, where you pull one out and the whole lot, Jenga. You see my grandchildren are a bit old, can't you? But, you know, it's so many different parts that go together to make up how we continue to manage growth, provide a good environment, protect our environment, provide a good living standard for our communities, good amenities, and deal with the impenetrable at times legislation that should be enabling all of that, but at times seems to stifle it or contradict one another to make it much more difficult to achieve. And that's not even mentioning the funding. And we've talked a lot about the funding stacks that we've had to put together. Again, if using different sources, different timelines, different criteria, and I just have to compliment the staff that have managed all of that for some of the projects that we've got. And I think of Tauranga Enabling Works and the funding stack and the development stack, and you know, it just becomes almost impossible for the average person to understand why it takes so long for things to happen. And it's taken us 3 years to get our heads around why some of this has taken so long. So I think, you know, you put together a really good document that is, again, easy to read, easy to understand, and sends some pretty good messages to the incoming councillors. And we certainly wish them every success. It's been a huge privilege to be a part of Tauranga's history over the last 3.5 years. For me personally, as a Bay of Plenty resident, Tauranga is our capital, state capital, if you like, our regional capital, and we need it to be a great city for the rest of the region. And we need it to be a great place that we want to visit, and we want to bring our children and our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren to visit and enjoy. And so for me, as I say, it's been a huge privilege to be part of the history of making sure that it takes its place as one of New Zealand's great cities. Stephen.
Thank you, Chair. And I think that the meeting has recorded a lot of what has been needed in the city, and we've got an enormous program of what I describe as business as usual, or should be business as usual going forward. But what this briefing does, from my perspective, is set out the top 5 things beyond business as usual. The first and premier of that is what we've just been discussing, the importance of a regional deal and getting a partnership with our peer organisations across the sub-region, but also the central government. The second key responsibility, I think, of the new council coming in will be to make a decision on Three Waters and the formation of a council-controlled organisation that will take the investment in Three Waters off the council's balance sheet and be funded by charges of that water utility to the consumers. The key reason why that is so important for the city is not only in delivering great high quality water services to our community, but it also enables us to free up our own council balance sheet to fund the necessary investment that will be necessary to partner with central government and make the investment to address our housing and transportation needs. That's a really critical factor. The third is holding true to the growth plan for the city from the smart growth plan, but then within the city's own boundaries, the significance of the Western Corridor, as I outlined before, and getting State Highway 29 committed as soon as we possibly can, because that's the enabler really of that growth path. Then the vexed question, number 4, possibly should be number 1, is how we fund and finance all of that. And what we do clearly know is that our existing funding tools are insufficient to fund the level of investment. We're talking many billions of dollars of investment that are required to meet our growth challenges and our infrastructure deficit. So we are going to have to look at new forms of revenue raising. We explored time of use charging. It would be great if the new council can pick that up and explore that further with central government, just as Auckland is, because that is, I think, going to be key to managing our traffic network more efficiently and more effectively and getting best use of our existing asset, but also enabling mode shift, emissions reduction, and critically more revenue to fund in a better transport system going forward. And lastly, we had a lot of discussion in the meeting today about the organisational development, and I think continuing that development of the organisation is a critical responsibility of the new council coming in. We've made a jolly good start and we've got a great organisation, and I would hate to see that diminished in any way. In fact, the role of the new council needs to be to build on that capacity and capability across the organisation, because we know that when we do that, it can really deliver at scale and at pace and make a difference. So to me, those are the 5 key areas that are beyond business as usual and are very clearly set out in the report that Cashy's put together. So thank you very much, Cashy, and the team that were responsible for doing that. And I hope the new council pick up on each of the challenges that we've left behind. We haven't certainly done it all. There is much to be done. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm prepared to move. I'll move the recommendation that we receive the report briefing to incoming council and approve the briefing as tabled at the meeting. You happy to second? Any further discussion? All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Thank you very much. So that brings us then to the public excluded session.
Before you go there, I just wanted to, a couple of minutes before and I wanted to do this in public as opposed to closed. So I really wanted, if you are happy with that, given this is our last public meeting as a commission, I really wanted to acknowledge you as chair, the able chairmanship over the last 3.5 years, and providing that environment to make the most of the skills and experiences around the commission table. It's been a great journey, and as you have noted previously, we always haven't agreed on everything. But I think what stands perhaps us apart from a general elected council is that we've worked hard in terms of where those differences are and work those matters through. So it was just an opportunity to acknowledge that. When I got a call from DIA in January 2021, my first question was, who potentially will be around the table? So, and whilst I knew Shad well, I only knew you and Stephen by reputation, etc. So it's been a superb journey, an opportunity not to have been missed, but it is time to hand on the mantle. And also in terms of my colleague commissioners generally, it's been great working with you, the ability for us to actually clearly focus on what needed to be achieved for the good of the city. And that has been much and varied in terms of the issues and matters that we have had to work our way through. And after looking at that executive report today in terms of that achievement, not just in terms of the commission, but also with the executive team and more broadly our staff and with our partners. So just wanted to have that acknowledgement and wish everyone well post our departure. And as I said at a meeting last week, looking forward to being decommissioned.
Bill, thank you, Bill. Yes, well, it has been a pleasure working. And I think, we do owe Nanaia, the Honourable Nanaia Mahuta, the kudos for picking the team with the various skills and talents that we brought to the table. It's been a good mix. And it's been a pleasure working with you all. I didn't know you and Cher. That was the first question I asked. Well, who else is there? I knew Stephen. I think I'd only been made Minister of Local Government about 20 minutes when he was on the phone wanting to come and lobby me probably over road pricing or variable road pricing. Waters, it was over Waters, yes. But no, it has been a pleasure and thank you for those kind remarks. And with that, I'll ask for someone to move us into public exclusion.